It's been quite a past couple of months because in terms of my research, I've been looking into various threads, esoteric threads going back now for the past 15 years or so. And just recently, a remote viewing project that I've been involved in designing has come back to give me the critical pieces of the puzzle. And this has led to almost a rush of connections, which have allowed me to make some really good breakthroughs here. And they especially bear on many of the topics that I know your guests are interested in, like cycles of destruction built into the earth and what causes them. I mean, we've got clear evidence of this in the geophysical record. And from an esoteric perspective, there are a few different things that people have put forward as causes. A lot of people talk about some sort of exotic body, like a cometary body, things like that. And then you've also got the cycles of destruction based upon conjunction patterns. So this is the kind of information I want to give, with some really solid solutions to some very important mythological stories.
Well, fantastic. And first, just kind of a little bit of humor here. It was funny because when I first started texting you, we hadn't actually talked yet. I sent you a message. I said, "Wow, who's that lady on the picture of your website?" She caught my attention, and you write back, "That's a dude." And I said, I thought to myself, "Oh wow, no way." I said, "Well, this has got to be some type of, is this like a Baphomet lookalike in the female aspect? Is this an androgynous person here? What's going on?" And you're like, "No, it's a 17th century painting." So then I said, "No way." And I sent you the picture of what I was looking at in your website, and then you're like, "No, you're right. That's definitely a chick." And so I thought that was just hilarious.
It was the Skype. My little Skype icon thing is only a small picture, and you can only expand it, really small, just to look at it. And it is a 17th century picture of a man, looking at the globe. And they have long hair back then, and so that's the. I thought you were referring to my Skype thing, so not my website picture. That is definitely a woman with holding the skull, and that's actually if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a link to the person that does the Geraldine something right at the bottom. Right at the very bottom. Yep, that's the one. Geraldine Lamar. That's her website link there. She's a professional photographer. I actually paid her 45 euros to use some of her pro pictures there, and that's one of them. So I'm supporting her work there and giving her the link as well. So yes, there's some really beautiful models, and she was doing some kind of esoteric shoot, like tattoos, and she drew them on herself. So that's one of her more astoundingly beautiful models.
Yeah, that's awesome, and certainly great to give her a shout out. So if anybody's interested in some work, definitely check out Geraldine Lamana. Is that proper?
Is it Lamana? I have to look at my own website now.
Okay, well, I'm sorry if we got that wrong, but so let's get into the cycles of doom here. I mean, essentially it's what I'm going to call it, but you've got a different word for it that's, I'm sure, a lot more scientific than what I came up with there. But, certainly just feel free to share this with us, and thank you for spending your time with us. I'm glad you reached out.
I'll just get straight on with it. I mean, basically, a lot of the, work in esoteric mysteries is concerned with what we generally call world ages. Yeah. I mean, that's the general term I think a lot of people use, and they link it into things like the Mayan long count calendar, for example, the Aztec calendar. That there are certain transitions, certain special intervals of time, and when we reach the end of one of those intervals, we have some sort of catastrophic, destructive event. And as a result, most people, or a lot of people on the earth, are killed off in this cataclysm. It involves geophysical disruption to the planet, environmental issues and that kind of thing. And then we kind of start at the beginning. And this goes back to Plato's work, the Timaeus. He discussed this very thing regarding a particular story he told, using Socrates, his mouthpiece, to expound his philosophy. Yeah. So when I see a lot of videos out there as well, a lot of people have looked into the whole issue of a Planet X or a Nibiru, and especially based upon the work of Zecharia Sitchin. And the general viewpoint of a lot of people out there is that we have some sort of unknown celestial body, a celestial body which is in a long period orbit on the order of every several thousand years, highly elliptical, It spends most of its time outside the solar system. It periodically makes a deep penetration, and when it does, it exhibits cometary type features, or it gets close to the Earth. And a lot of people say, well, we know about the whole issue of pole shifts. That is where we've got the Earth itself, and we have like a radical change in its orientation of its axis. We've got the Portolano maps, such as mentioned by people like Graham Hancock, giving you accurate coastlines of, say, Antarctica ice free. And this is these maps date to before we could accurately measure longitude. We've got things like that suggesting that some people have looked at that and said, well, it's not just a question of retreating ice fields. It's also a question of what if the Earth's axis were changed and what is currently Antarctica was just a bit further north. We've got things like that going on, right? So at the same time as that, then we've got this idea of a pole shift, and people will generally they'll say, well, how do you get the Earth's axis to radically topple? The basic common sense, almost, seemingly the first plausible option is we get another large mass body, gets close to the Earth, gravitationally grabs all of the equatorial bulge, because the Earth's like an ellipsoid, and causes it to topple over. But some sort of close interaction. Then we have concepts that you'll find in religious traditions, days of darkness. This is from a Christian tradition and also certain Greek mythologies. And so in this instance, then, again, what would cause days of darkness? And this is where people see the arrival of a large body coming in. Yes, it causes the pole shift, gets close to the Earth, but also blocks out the sun in an eclipse sort of scenario. So people like this solution, the Sitchin-esque solution. I can see you got some of the diagrams there from my website. I wrote a major article regarding Zecharia Sitchin's work on my website, and his basic interpretation of the Enuma Elish, yeah. And a lot of people out there, because a lot of people don't realize this, they hear Zecharia Sitchin, they say he translated the cuneiform tablets, from ancient Babylon or Mesopotamia, yeah. And these basically date to 1750 BC, that kind of era. I think the Enuma Elish ones date to about 1750 BC. And these are clay tablets which have survived. So paper would have been long gone, but the clay tablets have been excavated, mainly in the late 19th, early 20th centuries from these sites. And the majority of them is actually boring stuff, you might say, of like the civilization of Babylon and so forth, business transactions. I think about 5% of it, though, comes under the heading of what you might call mythology. And in Enuma Elish, it's just the name given. I think it's the first words on a series of clay tablets. And they describe a situation where you've got some kind of epic battle between two gods. One's Marduk and the other one is Tiamat. And so Sitchin talks about Marduk as being a god that comes, from the deep, which he interprets to mean deep space, right? And it comes in to do battle with this other god, Tiamat, and they clash in battle, both gods. Sitchin interprets that to mean two celestial bodies crash. And what happens as a result of this interaction is this god Marduk orbit, and he believes it's 3,600 years, and he said it takes up station Nibiru. That's its new station, if you will. So this is where we get Nibiru from. It's locked into this 3,600-year orbit. But it's important people understand this is a pure interpretation. He's got a mythological story, and he thinks it's taking place within the celestial realm. And I've got no problem with that. And most of them are. Most mythological stories are like that. And so he interprets two gods doing battle to two planets crashing into one another. And he creates this narrative. Now, interestingly enough, this 3,600-year orbit, this is one of the most, you could say, bizarre things regarding his orbit, because, to put it bluntly, it's purely as a number. Sitchin cites in his book, The 12th Planet, got it in the other room, I ain't got it here, and also Genesis Revisited, he cites this number 3,600 and calls it a sar, and he interprets it to mean a completed cycle, a princely or royal number, but also a perfect circle. That's straight away a bit bizarre, because if he's saying it's for a highly eccentric orbit, and he says it's perfect circle is one of its definitional meanings, a bit strange. But in my own book, which I wrote here, I wrote all about the Earth itself having an ideal orbit based upon 360 degrees, and this actually shows that the proofs I developed show that the Earth's orbit was perfectly circular when it had 360 days per year. It was a perfectly spherical form, not an ellipsoid, and it talks about the harmony of the solar system. So I don't really believe he's correct on that point. And again, he sees this god, this new supreme god coming in, this Marduk, sees this reference to this, kind of important number, a princely or royal number, and he makes the connection. And he actually For me, well, he actually states his exact words are strong circumstantial evidence linking the number 3600 as a time period that he says is in years to the orbital, well, what he believes is this god of the Enuma Elish as he's interpreted it. So he's developed this narrative. And there are, as I said, it's tenuous. I personally do not believe it is correct. And I'm going to get into that as we proceed. But as I said, a lot of people out there then, they like Sitchin's work. They see it as the basis. A lot of people have had variations on it. Maybe it's not a small rocky body. Maybe Nibiru is a planet orbiting a star. So they've gone into variant themes like the Earth's in a binary system. And that says got another star. So you've got our sun, another star, and they're essentially moving around a mutual barycenter point, a center of mass. And depending on variations here, you're either going to go for it's the solution to precession, and that's why we have the celestial shift, or you might say, no, it's not a solution to precession, but this binary star is close by, but we can't see it because it's a dark star, a brown dwarf. People have gone down that road, and then so they've said, well, we've got maybe Nibiru, rocky body, and other people have said it's some kind of star, and there's multiple orbital bodies, Nibiru being one of them, and the star doesn't enter our solar system, but the celestial bodies do at certain times. I think a lot of people know where I'm going, and they're saying all that. Now, what I personally have found in my own work, though, is that entire line of thought as an explanation, as a solution to understanding the cause of these cycles of destruction. I believe that is completely in error, and that what we really need to focus on are not it's not this solution involving some unknown body, but what the ancients also talk about, and these are conjunction cycles, right? Now, the ancients often talk in an astrological sense about what they call the music of the spheres. And one of the things that we know about music from the physical sciences is this concept of resonance. And I'm sure you've all seen these little demos where somebody gets a glass, puts it in a controlled chamber, and they hit it with various sound waves, and then it starts to wobble, and then it shatters.
Right.
Yeah? First it becomes agitated, and then it shatters. This is because the sound wave frequencies they've hit the natural frequency of the object, yeah? And this is what causes catastrophic failure. Now, when you look at the ancients themselves, their view of it is something similar. They refer to the planets as all sounding out their own wonderful musical harmonies, the music of the spheres. And when certain patterns are established, especially conjunction patterns, that's when we achieve these resonant agitative states, right? Now, I know that, Rex, you've looked at the book like the Nag Hammadi. You've
got a copy right next to me, actually.
Yeah.
Most updated version.
Yeah, I don't remember this is the updated one, but there's a nice one on the origin of the world. One of the this is for people who are not familiar with it. Nag Hammadi. It's a series of paper manuscripts that were salvaged from. Well, I think they've been dated to about the 4th century AD, but they were uncovered in 1945 in Egypt, in a place called Nag Hammadi. There are many treaties. Some of them are Christian in their tradition. Some of them are Egyptian. Yeah, there's even, I think, the Asclepius from the Corpus Hermetica. There's even partially a copy of Plato's The Republic. So it really is a library, as it says on the cover. It's not even one particular viewpoint, but it gives all kinds of, apocrypha, if you will, reserved teachings, not generally put out there. And when you see some of the statements in it, here's a good one. When they talk about the consummation of the age, this is from On the Origin of the World, just to relate a point. It says, before the consummation of the age, the whole place will shake with great thundering. Then the rulers will be sad. The angels will mourn for their mankind. The demons will weep over their seasons. Then the age will begin, and they will be disturbed. Their kings will be intoxicated with a fiery sword, and they will wage war against one another, so that the earth is intoxicated with bloodshed. And it says, then the sun will become dark. The moon will cause its light to cease. The stars of the sky will cancel their circuits. And a great clap of thunder will come out of the great force that is above, all the forces of chaos. Now, this is just one of those references talking about celestial bodies, things shaking, cancelling their circuits, a nice theme. But there's also another interesting one. This is Berossus and Manetho. Berossus, 4th century BC, a Chaldean. We've only got fragments of his work, and so this is just basically, I'm quoting a Roman here, Seneca, Naturalis Questiones, I think, questions about science, basically. And he's just referencing this guy, Berossus. It says, Berossus, who interpreted the prophecies of Bel, attributes these disasters, the end of the world and its aftermath, to the movements of the planets. He is so certain of this that he can determine a date for the conflagration and the great flood. He maintains that the Earth will burn whenever all the planets, which now have different orbits, converge in Cancer and are so arranged in the same path that a straight line can pass through their orbs, and that there will be a further great flood when the same planets so converge in Capricorn. For under the sign of Cancer occurs the change to summer, under Capricorn the change to winter. They are signs of great power occurring when there are movements in the change of season. So that's a very interesting reference there. And again, he's talking about conjunction patterns. Now, if you have a situation, and I'm going to go into this in the course of this presentation, discuss some of the myths, but if you have a situation where you have a resonant agitation of the solar system, yes, the planets achieve certain conjunction patterns, you can then get the planets start to shake, their axes destabilize. This gives you your pole shift scenarios without a crude recourse, if you will, to another celestial body just ploughing on through the solar system, getting near to the Earth, gravitationally affecting it, yes? We also have another reference, and this is from a book called, I don't know whether you're familiar with this one, Rex, the Pistis Sophia, means faith, wisdom. This is a great book for Christian mythologies, and in this book here, there's a nice passage, and I've actually got it on an article on my website, in fact, and it talks about the dragon of the outer darkness. Now, on my website, I've got a major 4-page presentation discussing the mystery of the dragon from a real physics perspective. Now, I said that in the Christian tradition, we have these days of darkness, yeah? Now, again, if you go with the idea that a celestial body comes in close to the, blocks out the light from the sun reaching the Earth because of an eclipse sort of scenario, you're looking at that. But if you look at some of these traditions here, they talk about something very special here. They are literally talking about the sun itself switching off temporarily as a visible emitter of light. And this again, when certain special patterns, and from the Pistis Sophia, there's a certain passage where people, Mary Magdalene, one of the questioners, she talks to Jesus and asks him all about the outer darkness, which is this great dragon swallowing its own tail. And so Mary continued again and said, "My Lord, doth the dragon of the outer darkness come into this world, or doth he not come?" The Saviour answered and said unto Mary, "When the light of the sun is outside, above the world, he covereth the darkness of the dragon. But if the sun is below the world, then the darkness of the dragon abideth as veiling of the sun, and the breath of the darkness cometh into the world in the form of a smoke in the night." And this next part's critical. He says, and I quote, "That is, if the sun withdraweth into himself his rays, then indeed the world is not able to endure the darkness of the dragon in its true form. Otherwise would it be dissolved and go to ruin with all." This translation here of the Pistis Sophia is 1921. Here you've got a guy, G.R. Smith, translating something, and he's literally talking about what we would refer to as the destructive interference of light waves, yes? This appears to be what he's actually talking about. So, if you've got like a loop reflecting back again, it's like the symbol of almost infinity, where the waves peak and trough cancel out to flat line. This then is what he seems to be referring to. Light waves cancelling themselves out and the sun switching off as a visible emitter of light. And again, this is tied in to some very special conjunction patterns. So this is the kind of solution I want to present today. So now I've done that bit of an introduction, I'm going to mention a few esoteric texts that are very interesting and have been used by various researchers. And one of them that is called the Kolbrin, right? And it's one of these texts, again, I can't tell you, there's a really brilliant consolidated history of the Kolbrin. It's one of these texts which it seemed to surface from a kind of almost a secret society, but not in a kind of a high level way, but a small group of people who've been preserving what are fragments of ancient texts which were almost destroyed in a fire in Glastonbury Abbey centuries ago, but they were survived intact and they've been basically translated and put into book form in the 20th century, yeah. And it's a collection of books, and I think there's 13 of them, based in Britain. 8 of them are Egyptian, and one of them is to do with the Trojans, like the Greeks, yeah. Trojans are, you've heard of the war of Ilium,
like the Spartans and stuff.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. Troy, Ilium. There's Homer. He wrote the Iliad, and That was based upon that war. It's a classic. But so the Kolbrin then, it talks about an object, an unknown object. It is not identified, but it's this great object that appears in the sky, and it gets closer and closer, and it's like a mountainous fire, and everybody's scared of this object, and it's belching forth all kinds of material. There's all these descriptions of it, how it's covering the land with dust, massive hailstones, the whole works, and people are basically they're terrified. They're massively, frightened by this, and it's causing such destruction. And it's this object in the sky called the Destroyer. Now, there's a few lines regarding this Destroyer then that are worthy of note, you see. And I'm going to just share my screen with you and show you what I mean by this. So,
yeah, this is great stuff, and I'm glad I appreciate the way you're bringing up a bunch of different texts from around the world, different times. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned the Nag Hammadi treatise that I find fascinating in the Secret Book of John, is when it refers to Adam being created by 365 demons with the archons, and the way that the archons are created and described is nothing short of extraordinary as well. Now, I look at it as a very symbolic and metaphoric, but it does resonate with me at so many different levels in reference to the archons and their way and influence of control. A lot of people have connected the archons to the Anunnaki. Some people say the archons control the Anunnaki. Some people say the archons created the Anunnaki. I really think it just comes down to there's so many different bits and pieces in different stories that if you look at in certain levels, you can resonate with it symbolically. If you want to take it to it being exactly like that, to a T, like it's described in the book. Some people do that with the Abrahamic text in the Old Testament, the New Testament, etc., like plucking somebody's eye out or stoning somebody to death because they committed some type of sin that's looked at in that religion. Literally, that happens in the Middle East all the time. I've heard stories of people in Saudi Arabia, of women in Saudi Arabia that were part of an all-woman college that got lit on fire by somebody, so they came out of the college without being completely covered, and some basically guards, essentially, or military or law enforcement of some type, saw them come out of there without their full clothing on, and they shot them, they killed them. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. So we don't hear a lot about that, but it's just interesting how powerful religions can be if you take things so literal sometimes, I think.
I must admit, on that last point, I'm reminded of a film I have seen. Have you seen Kingdom of Heaven? Orlando Bloom, about the Crusades?
I have
Jeremy
not.
Irons. I like that film a lot because, it has some brilliant lines in it. They're under siege, right? You got the forces of Saladin all outside Jerusalem, and they've just had a battle for the day, and they're just, dealing with the wounded. And it was an interesting statement. So Orlando Bloom is defending Jerusalem, and this priest guy comes up to him, and they've got all their own dead bodies. And the priest says something like, well, according to Christian tradition, we can't burn these bodies or whatever, they won't get the afterlife and all that. I can't remember exactly. And Orlando Bloom, his character, just looks at this priest and says, look, if we don't burn all these bodies right now, we will all be dead of disease in 3 days. God will understand. And if he does not, then he is not God, and it doesn't matter. And I'll just say to all those people out there wearing a veil, God doesn't care whether you're wearing a veil or not. And if he does, he is not God, in which case it doesn't matter. That's what I'd say to that. As far as the thing about, you're going to
make that person horny, man. You better put some clothes on. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well,
look, you can see her neck, man. Isn't that hot? Oh my gosh.
It is crazy, and in a lot of Islamic countries, it's literally illegal for, say, a Christian to go over there and start preaching Christianity, but it's okay for them to come over to a Christian country. We allow them, we're letting them preach their religion, but it's illegal to do the same. So
it's interesting.
Yeah. In reference to the Nag Hammadi stuff that you were talking about as well, though, I could talk for a while on this. You talk about them being symbolically interpreted, like the archons and whatever. For me, it's like with many things. You're either dealing with stories that you generally interpret when we talk about, the gods, capital G or small g, maybe. I think small g, yes. We're either thinking about natural forces and the mathematics of their structure somehow tied into frequencies, and also qualitative principles activated. And I definitely would say that the whole story about the fall of Sophia, the whole, what they are, and Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, the half maker, He's the chief god of the blind. He's the guy that creates all the lower, rulers and whatever. And the structure you talked about, 365 demons, that's in the Peace Sophia as well. And I believe under those there are another 1,800 demons under there. And again, it's a kind of a structure to the cosmic framework as a kind of prison cell, an energetic structure which is flawed. And these cycles of destruction, they basically prevent the world from reaching too much disorder by realigning it again. Yes, they kind of do that. So there's that aspect to consider here, and I would say definitely that's a part of it. So anyway, back to the cycles of destruction. Now, can you see on screen this highlighted passage I've got?
Yes.
This is a section from the Colbrin, and it's almost like a Jesus type story. There's a guy called Habaray who's one of the smartest guys around, so to speak, and he's going to various villages teaching them various teachings, ancient wisdom stuff, but they don't like what he's saying and he's kind of upsetting them. So instead he teaches them, as it says here, so Habaray concealed many things from them and taught by simple tales things within their understanding. He taught them the mysteries concerning the wheel of the years and divided the year into a summer half and a winter half with a great year circle of 52 years, 104 of which was the circle of the destroyer. So we've got this statement here that this destroyer body, this strange star that caused all this destruction, it's tied into something to do with a 52-year cycle, something to do with 104 years, which is the circle of the destroyer. In another reference, it talks about this destroyer comes and talks about every 25 generations or something like that. Now, depending on whether you're going for what is a generation, 25 years, 50 years, you get this general viewpoint that this destroyer seems to come on the order of every couple of thousand years possibly. But for some reason, we've got this very interesting reference here towards 52 years and 104 years. And it makes you think that maybe this is a special interval that is used to actively track this destroyer. So the first step to identifying this destroyer is to understand what's this 104-year circle of the destroyer all about. And we've got this cycle of 104 years. So what's the significance of this cycle? Well, the answer is tied in to a particular cycle, which is a calendar system that was created by the Aztecs and the Maya of Central America, right? And in this regard, then, they had a special cycle which was based upon 52 years. This is a special calendar cycle associated with a ritual that they engaged in. You see, when we, as European explorers, starting mainly first with the Spanish, we went over, in 1492, and following that, we went over to the Americas and we met the indigenous peoples for the first time. And so there were a lot of people that went over there, especially with the Spanish expeditions, and some of them included priests, right? Because obviously they wanted to, when they met the local natives, they needed to convert them to Catholicism, which is the one true religion. Of course it is. There can't be a mistake on that. So they basically, they didn't like all of their rituals and practices and thought they were of the devil, yeah? So they met up with the natives and they got acquainted with them and asked them about their traditions. And we've got a nice reference here, and this is from a book. This is by, can you see that? The Adrian Gilbert, Maurice Cotterell, The Mayan Prophecies. Now, I'm going to cite here this nice little passage. This is from one of the guys that went there, a Christian friar, Bernardino Sahagun. And he talks all about this ritual that he found that they were engaged in, these Maya. Well, the Aztecs did it every 52 years. The Maya actually did it just every year. But it's interesting that the Aztecs seem to be doing it every 52 years. They really understood this cycle, it seems, well, at least to some extent. And it says here, and this is a quote then, from Bernardino Sahagun, and this is from, I think, 1564. The measurement of all times that these Indians, the Mexicans, carried out was as follows. Largest measurement of time was 104 years, and they called it a century. Half of this period, which is 52 years, they called a sheaf of years. This number of years they have counted since ancient times. It is not known when it began, but they quite faithfully believed that the world would come to an end at the termination of one of these sheafs, one of these 52-year periods. And they had prophecies and oracles that the movement of heaven would cease then. And they took for a signal the movement of the Cabrias, which means Pleiades, as in the star constellation of Pleiades. They took for a signal the movement of the Pleiades in relation to the night of the feast, which they called And I'm not going to try and pronounce that, but there's this feast. Anyway, it's basically called the New Fire Ceremony, yeah? They lit a new fire. They put out all the fires throughout all the lands, extinguished them all, and then on this one special day of a year, right? And this is when there is a conjunction between the sun, the Earth, and the Pleiades star group in that order. Now, the Pleiades, when I say you might think of it as a constellation, but in actual fact, it's a very small, compact group of stars. Most constellations, the primary ones we have, like 12, the main 12 ones, they all split up, 30 degrees along the ecliptic, yeah? They split up the Earth into 30 degrees. The Pleiades is a small group of 9 stars. It's Atlas and Alcyone, and their 7 daughters. And they're all contained in about 1 degree, a little tight packed group. So there's this one special time of the year, and currently it's about November, I think November the 6th, something like that. And this is where, if you're at midnight on a certain latitude, yeah, and if the Pleiades are in the highest point in the sky at midnight on that latitude, yeah, you're at, right, highest point in the sky, zenith point at midnight, yeah, then that implies that the sun is going to be 180 degrees around the other side of the Earth. So you're going to be in a conjunction scenario, yeah? So they were doing this every time on the one day of the year when there's a conjunction between the sun, the Earth, and the Pleiades in that order. And sometimes it involved ritual sacrifice, but they put out all these fires and they lit a new one, but they waited. They were all waiting and watching the Pleiades. And they were hoping that it would just cross over the meridian line. And if it is, oof, we can breathe a sigh of relief because the world's not going to end. We've got at least another 52 years. And this is what this guy says. He says, He says here, when they waited until they arrived, yeah. When they saw that the Pleiades passed the zenith, they understood that the movement of the heavens was not to cease, and that it was not the end of the world, but that it would last another 52 years, and the world surely would not come to an end. The last new fire ceremony they held was in the year 1507. They held it with all solemnity because the Spanish had not yet arrived. In 1559, the next chief that they called Toxiua Mol Pillar or something ended. On this occasion, they did not hold a public celebration because the Spanish and their priests were in the land. By now, in 1576, the year in which Sahagun is writing, 17 years of the present Gavila have passed. And again, he goes on to say, it is clear that this method of measurement was the devil's invention in order to renew the covenant they had with him every 52 years, frightening them with the approach of the end of the world, making them believe that he extended time and granted it to them as his gift, moving the world forward. So in other words, he doesn't like their ceremony. He thinks it's all of the devil, but it is incredibly interesting that here you've got a ceremony that they do every 52 years, and they think that somehow the end of the world will follow on one of these intervals. And if you double 52, you get 104. And this 104 is tied into this circle of the destroyer. So the question is, why 52 years? Right? If they are actually timing this by observation, and they are doing it at the precise time when there's a conjunction involving the Earth, the Pleiades, and the Sun, then we're talking about every 52 sidereal years. And just bear with me 1 second.
Are you in the UK, Keith?
Yeah.
It's a little chilly out there, huh?
A little bit, yeah.
It's like 90-something degrees out here in Texas. Feels like it anyway.
Oh, God.
It's probably 100-something in my garage right now.
I've got some cards here that I've made up just to hold up to the screen. Right? So a sidereal year is this length of time here. 365.256363 days, yeah? Because of precession, because of all the background stars subtly shift, right, relative to the solar system, yeah? For the Earth, say, to reconjunct with the Sun and any marker background star, yeah, in the course of a year, it takes this amount of time. We measure the seasons, though, by our calendar in terms of the Earth achieving successive, say, vernal equinox values. And that's equal to the tropical year, which is this length of time, yeah? And this is the tropical year is 20 minutes less than the sidereal year, yeah? So the point is, the Aztecs, they're doing 52 years of the sidereal year, right, for observing their ceremony, yeah? Now, saying all that then, so why 52 years? Well, it turns out that this 52 sidereal years is based kind of loosely on a 52-year calendar that they had, which they actively used to track Earth-Venus conjunctions. And I'm going to share my screen with you to illustrate this point. Let me see now. You can see here on screen then, we've got what is the Mayan Aztec calendar round cycle. And basically, they had 2 units of time. One is 365 days called the Hab, and they had another unit of time, which is 260 days called the Zolkin. And what you've basically got here is the figure. If you set both cycles and you started them all simultaneously, they would resynchronize after completing 18,980 days, as you can see. And this completes 52 years of 365 days and also 73 of these 260 day Zolkin cycles. So this 52 years is in fact 52 calendar years of 365 days, but they get that, and that seems to give them this loose 52 years. But then they kind of use the actual observations looking at the Pleiades Earth conjunction, which means that in reality they're doing their ceremony every 52 sidereal years. Yeah. Now we'll just move on to this one here, just to show you what we're talking about here. So here are what you might call standard textbook values, yeah, for the tropical year and the Venus orbital period. And the equation you can see there on screen, right? If you multiply the Earth by Venus orbital period and you divide that by the Earth subtracting Venus, you get this figure here, 583.9202 days or so, yeah? And what that means is, if you have, say, the Earth and Venus in conjunction at, say, 12 o'clock noon position, 0 degrees, yeah? From a top-down view, they both go around the sun anti-clockwise. So, after you have completed 583 days or so, Venus and the Earth will be in realignment. They will not, though, be in realignment back at 12 o'clock noon, but there'll be offsets. They'll be at a different part of the degree thing. Yeah. So that's what happens there with that one. Yeah. So in that instance, I think it's like 1.6 times into the new orbit for Venus. Oh, wait a minute. I'd have to work that out on my calculator. But yeah, I did an animation for this, so I'll have to see if I can get that to you. But basically, they don't reconjunct to the same point in the sky. Yeah, you'd need to have many more multiples before they did that. But anyway, this is where we get this 52-year cycle from, right? But what they did, and you can see on screen here, we get this 18,980 days. But if they take this 260 days, yeah, and they subtract, or so they divide it by 100, you get 2.6. And here's the genius bit. If you take that off, the 18,980, yeah, and you then divide that by your conjunction cycles, you get 32.5, almost dead on, but not quite. In other words, you've got 32 and a half Earth-Venus conjunctions, right, within one of these 52-year periods, yeah? And this is why we double the values. If you double all the values, it becomes 37,960 days rather than the 18,001, yeah? And it's 104 years of 365 days. The correction error is doubled to 5.2 days. So now you contain, within 104 years, you actively contain 65 Earth-Venus conjunctions with exceptional accuracy, yeah? That's what you get here. And there's also, though, in addition to this, another scholar noted that in addition to the basic time cycles, the Hab and the Zolkin, allowing you to track Earth-Venus conjunctions, they also allowed you to track Earth-Mars conjunctions. And you can see on screen here I've done the same thing, same equation. Mars and the Earth reconjunct every 779.9347 days or so, yeah? And as a result of this, it turns out that 146 of those conjunctions, the value there giving this 113.870, etc., yeah? If you divide that by 6, you get a value which is, again, very, very close to the 52-year sheaf cycle, yeah? And interesting enough, 146 divided by 2 is 73, and 73 is the number of 260-day Zolkin cycles that link into the 52 years. So you've got this close correspondence, here. And there was a researcher called Lounsbury, a real orthodox Mayan scholar, and he noted this Mars connection, right? So You got the Mars connection there, like so. So what you've got then, to summarize, you've got the Kolbrin talking about a 104-year cycle linked to this destroyer body, this unidentified star-type body. You've got the Aztecs and the Maya. They've got a calendar tied into Earth, Venus, Mars conjunctions, and also the Pleiades thrown in as well. Yeah, and this particular calendar system, then they use this to track what they thought was the end of the world, to try to prevent it from happening. Yeah. So what's the connection, and how can we get some more details about this? And the answer is yes. You see, we need to just go from the New World, from Mesoamerica, or Mexico as it's now called, and we now have to go back to a book from this is an absolute classic book. I recommend this one, Ovid, Metamorphoses, right? Publius Ovidus Naso, he was a Roman, and he was born, it says here, 43 BC to 17 AD, right? So this book is all about Greek mythology, okay? We're talking like Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Ares, Aphrodite, all that lot. If you've ever seen the film Clash of the Titans, it's that pantheon of gods, yeah? So he's giving all these descriptions, or all these fantastic tales of the Olympian gods. And again, a lot of them are allegorical tales, all to do with the planets and various patterns established by them, okay? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you a quick question then. I mean, as far as the Titans go, and then release the Kraken, you think the Kraken was actually real, possibly?
Well, as a matter of fact, what I'm going to get into a bit later on, the Kraken, if you're obviously from the film Clash of the Titans, Perseus is the big hero, and he's a constellation in the sky. And although it's the Kraken in the films, like the one Laurence Olivier was in, and there was a recent remake, the sea monster's called Cetus, which is another constellation. They're both close to one another in the sky, and these constellations are critical markers for the time when these days of disaster occur. So I'm definitely going to get into that solution, so bear with me.
Absolutely.
So anyway, this book then, Ovid's Metamorphoses, there is a really good story in it. It is the story of how two gods, Aphrodite and Ares, were having an illicit affair. Now, Aphrodite is the goddess of love. Ares is the god of war. And Aphrodite is married to Vulcan, or Hephaestus. He's this craftsman guy. So Aphrodite is having an affair with Ares. And the story goes, in Ovid's Metamorphoses, there's a witness to this illicit union between Aphrodite and Ares. The witness is the sun. The sun sees both of these gods in improper union, and as a result, goes off to the husband, Vulcan, or Hephaestus, and says, hey, your wife, she's unfaithful. Now, what does Vulcan do? Because he's this master craftsman, he flies into a rage and thinks, right, what am I going to do? I'm going to get her. I'm going to get my own back on it. So what he does is he fashions a netting, a special type of net, okay, which is so fine that even the gods themselves can't see the chain netting. So, and he puts all this netting around the rafters of the bed, their marital bed. And then he makes, when all the gods are there, he says, hey guys, I'm going to visit my favorite shrine in Lemnos on the earth. I'll be back in a few days. Knowing that his wife and Ares are going to go straight to the marital bed and, get it on. So they both go then, and they lie down in the bed, and then the chains fall straight upon them and capture them, yeah? The sun goes to Hephaestus and says, hey, your wife and the lover caught. So Hephaestus calls all the other gods in and says, look, I've got him here. My wife's totally unfaithful. And they're all like laughing their asses off, because they've been caught right in the act. Now, what is the solution to this story? Well, that's the first part of the story. Before I get into that, let me tell you what happens next. And this is where we get the mythology, which ties into some sort of earthbound disaster. Aphrodite is released from the chains along with Ares, with some compensation, to the husband. And she's furious with the sun. because the sun was the one that informed the husband, her husband, about the affair. So she decides to take revenge on the sun, and because she's the goddess of love, love is her weapon. She puts it into the mind of the sun to become infatuated with this goddess called Lukotho. Yeah, she's sometimes called the white goddess, and she's some kind of nymph chick, some really hot-looking woman. Yeah, so the sun is going about his daily job, bringing light to the world. He's going across the sky in a nice smooth arc, and he catches sight of Lukotho on the earth. And what does he do then? Well, what does any man do when they see a hot chick? He slows down in the sky, forgets what his job is.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly. So he wants to get an eyeful of this hot chick on the earth. And Ovid relates how he's distracted by this woman every time he's going round. So sometimes he's going too slow, other times he's plunging into the waves too fast at the end of the earth, He's kind of all over the place. So what he does is he goes to visit Lukotho to declare his love. He's disguised, as gods do, as Lukotho's mother. And when he gets there, Lukotho has 12 maidservants, right? Big hint. He dismisses the maidservants and then reveals himself to Lukotho, and he embraces her, engaging in a union with her. In other words, they make love, just like Ares and Aphrodite. Now, what happens is Lukotho's got one of these jealous type sisters who says, hey, to their father, the sun and Lukotho, they've been getting it on here. That's not right. So his father is furious, what his daughter's done. And as punishment, he kind of buries her in some kind of pit. And the son tries to rescue her, but he can't, and she ends up dying. As a result of Lukotho's death, because the son was in love with her, he's now grief-stricken. And he goes a pale, sickly colour. In fact, Ovid goes out of his way to say the sun goes totally dark, and it strikes terror into the hearts of mortals. And he explicitly says this is not just the result of an eclipse. This is something more. The sun is totally dark. And he even says the last time this occurred is when he lost his own son Phaeton, which is another interesting story. That's for another time, though. So the sun goes dark. So firstly, we've got the sun all over the place, distracted, going across the sky. Yeah, and then we've got the sun going dark. And all this is tied in, seemingly, to some destructive events. Because basically, if we're talking about the sun slowing down and speeding up in the sky, we're not really talking about the sun. We're talking about the Earth's axis being destabilized. And we're talking about the sun suffering a general switching off as a visible emitter of light. Now, what is the solution to that story? Well, oddly enough, this book here, Hamlet's Mill, has the answer. And I can't remember the exact page, but there was a guy, Lucian of Samosata, does give the solution to this. And it involves, basically, he notes that... I can't find page, so sorry. Anyway, he basically, what they cite here, the authors of Hamlet's Mill, they cite Lucian of Samosata as a Roman, again, same time as Ovid. And he states that this particular story, right, of Ares and Aphrodite being caught in the net, Ares, god of war, that's the planet Mars, Venus, Aphrodite, yeah, goddess of love is Venus. So when we talk about the sun seeing them in an improper union, the sun's the central star. So Venus, as an inner planet, moves up into conjunction with Mars. The sun sees a conjunction. He sees a conjunction between Venus and Mars. And Lucian says in his solution here, he says the netting is the Pleiades star constellation. A conjunction of those three things, yes? Now, we can also note that we then have this conjunction involving seemingly the sun and the moon and the earth, yeah, like an eclipse, yeah, that also would be a conjunction. And this is the one that seems to lead to a day of disaster, okay? So we've got some kind of conjunction pattern here which is actively associated with some sort of disaster. And this is where I'm going to have to discuss by my own original research here. When I look at the works like of Hamlet's Mill and Immanuel Velikovsky was writing in like the 50s and whatever, there's one thing that the authors of these works did not do that would have really completed their research. And we can totally forgive them because it wasn't available to them really. But right now we have available pretty much to everybody with a computer. We have some very fancy astronomy software out there, yeah? And we can look at the sky going back thousands of years, yeah, or even forwards thousands of years. And we've got constellations mapped into them, the positions of the planets. We are now at a time when we could do an evaluation of the heavens to work out just when, to try to, draw it out and figure out when these special cycles occurred, yeah, which triggered these celestial resonance events, yeah. And that is exactly what I did. I went to do a package called Starry Night. Starry Night Pro, a ridiculously expensive one, and I've got it on the computer. And I did a very deep analysis of all the conjunctions that were involving associated with Venus, the Earth, Mars, the Pleiades, going back from the present time back to about 14,000 BC. Yeah, and I wanted to see if I could work out when this kind of pattern, as identified in Ovid, took place, and whether I could really confirm it. Now, here's where we have to get a bit esoteric. So let me ask you, Rex, what do you know about remote viewing?
Well, I guess you could say I know more than most. I've interviewed Daz Smith, Dick Allgaier, Courtney Brown. I've researched it quite extensively as well. I know about the controlled remote viewing program that the military has. I've talked to Pat Buchanan, so I know a little bit.
Well, I got somebody to remote view what is generally referred to as Planet X. The body in question identified in the Colbrin. I designed a unique experiment, well, to me at least, a specific tailored experiment in order to try to determine and identify what the celestial body in question was. And one of the classic ones I had at my end, a ton of envelopes, all with random codes on. And I sent the remote viewer a list of those very same random codes. In each envelope were target details, right? And I basically wanted him to try to remote view it. But let me tell you the basis behind this experiment, though, before I proceed to the results. Everything I've told you so far, you're no doubt familiar with the work of Velikovsky, right? And Immanuel Velikovsky, and you've also interviewed, is it Thorndike? Is it Thunderbolts?
Wal Thornhill, great guy.
Wal Thornhill, yes. I've seen a few of their presentations as well, and they follow the work of Velikovsky. And Velikovsky is of the viewpoint that Venus was once a comet. And also, the Thunderbolts project, Wal, is from the previous interview, a lot of people are under the impression that Venus is a recent entrant into our solar system, that prior to about 3000 BC or whatever, no records of it, yeah? And it came in as a comet, caused a lot of devastation, and then went into a kind of a planetary type orbit, yeah? Now, Velikovsky was of the view that prior to the 8th century BC, for a period of a few thousand years, the Earth had 360 days per year, and that something happened round about the 8th century, and that caused a change so that the length of the year then increased to that one, yeah, went to 365 days or so, yeah. So he thinks that. Now, personally speaking, that is directly in conflict with my own research. Whereas I do believe the Earth once had 360 days per year, I believe that was many, many millions of years ago. We'd have to get into another topic on that one. But suffice it to say, what I'm going to present actually today is going to essentially prove that the Earth had 365 days or so, going back definitely into well beyond 3000 BC, well beyond the time period of Velikovsky. But basically, Velikovsky was under the impression that Venus was a comet and that it came in recently, caused some devastation, settled into a planet. Yeah, planetary type orbit, yeah. Well, what my own work has revealed here is that what we actually have is not that. Venus has, in my view, been in the solar system for eons, just like, say, the Earth. And what happens is we achieve certain special conjunction patterns which trigger resonant agitation of the solar system, and which trigger or ignite the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, to become comets. They flare up, develop a cometary tail which stretches many millions of miles away from them. Yeah, and this may last for possibly a few weeks or months, I'm not entirely sure, but then it dies down again. Yeah, the resonance, the agitation stops, things settle back, and that periodically this is what is happening. So I don't think Venus was a comet that came in did some damage, settled into a new orbit just a few thousand years ago. I think Venus has been, millions of years in the solar system along with the Earth. It's just that what we're dealing with is a special mechanism which activates Venus as a comet. Now, cometary tails can actually be tens of millions of miles in length, for even small little objects, yeah? And Venus is an inner planet. Its distance from the sun is about 67 million miles. The Earth's distance is about 93 million miles, right? They're roughly on the same plane. So what would happen if Venus were to develop a cometary tail and be ignited as a comet? It would spew out a lot of debris outwards because cometary tails point away from the sun, and the Earth would end up going through it, in the next few years. While the debris is still settling for that next couple of years or so, you could have potential for major fragments hitting it, etc., yeah? So the resonance could destabilize the planet's axis a bit, yeah? Igniting Venus, causing this destruction. So this is what I was thinking was going on, yeah? And that these conjunction patterns associated with the Earth, Venus, Mars, and somehow the Pleiades, that this is what triggered this resonant agitation and ignited Venus as a comet. So my working theory basically is Venus is the so-called Planet X that people are looking for, but it's a known body. So for all those researchers out there thinking that there's some unidentified body that we need to look out for in a highly eccentric elliptical orbit, I think that that body that you're looking for is a fantasy. It does not exist, yeah? I think we're dealing with special conjunction patterns, and this ignites Venus. Venus becomes the comet, and it's material that comes away from Venus, which periodically hits us. That's the danger. And I'm going to tie that together with some geophysical evidence. But for now then, I had got this remote viewing project, and I know a remote viewer, and I have to say it was working blind, so he had absolutely no idea what the experiment was, and it was a big ask. I knew he was interested in this subject, and we've been speaking on and off for several months or whatever, well, maybe a year or so, here and there. But I kind of approached him, in a lull point, and I said, there's this project I'm interested in, and I know you're a remote viewer, you've told me. And I said, I know you're really interested in as well, and I can't tell you about it, obviously, because you've got to be blind. You need to know nothing about it. And so I said, but I'll give you full disclosure, full details and everything, right? And he said, okay then. So I said, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to send you 62 random codes. That's what I sent him, a list, yeah? So I sent him random codes, right? At my end, I had 62 envelopes, yeah, with these random codes on. And inside each envelope, sealed away, right, I got a slip of paper. And the slip of paper had on it the target details. And the target details were quite simply the sun, the star at the center of our solar system, the planet Venus, and the planet Earth. And associated with them were various dates. I had a date next to them. And these were dates going back to various times that I've identified through the Starry Night program when we had close conjunctions involving the Earth, Venus, Mars, and the Pleiades. And basically, it was almost intuitive in some respects. I picked a bundle of dates that I thought would be the best contenders, and I thought these were the dates when something strange might be present with the color of the sun, whilst simultaneously Venus might be exhibiting cometary-like features. And I thought, I'll give him all those. He'll remote view them. And what I was thinking, the essential thing was this. I was thinking that he would give me details back, which would either be kind of boring, just identifying a spherical body, no features, nothing to see, whatever. And he'd identify that different times. And then on one random occasion, he'd identify something that looks like it's active in some way, in an unusual way. And I was hoping if he targeted Venus, and he didn't know if it was Venus because he had no idea what the target details were in the envelopes, yeah? What I gave him, there were 3 questions. I wanted to keep some structure to this. So I gave him the random codes, and I said, here are 3 kind of non-leading questions. I said, describe the shape or form of the target, question 1. Question 2, what is the color of the target? And question 3, is the target engaged in any significant activity or isn't it? So I gave him those 3 questions, and he kind of created his own templates to that effect. He wrote verbal or written descriptions to those 3, and he also drew a picture of what it was. Now, I could go through all the sessions myself, but I'm only going to give you the 2 key ones which were critical, because I found what I believe was a critical pairing, and this is the most exquisite thing. And these dates, when I asked him to view the various planets, the Earth and Venus and also the Sun, they were exceptionally precise. So by way of example, we can see that there.
Mm-hmm.
It says time of interest, Julian calendar, 5th of October, 3153 BC, target the sun, the star at the center of our solar system. You see that code there, yeah? When I opened up each envelope, yeah, it had the code on, yeah? I immediately took the piece of paper out and wrote the code on it so that I know what slip of paper was associated. And he gave me a PDF file of his results, yeah? He gave me a scanned PDF file of all the sheets, and he only managed to do 11. But the critical pairing I was actually wanting, yeah, he did it, yeah? It was an amazing success. And I'm going to just go through the results with you and show you the scanned images then on screen. So what happened then was this. I got the, and just to show you as well, when I put all the targets and printed them out and put them in the envelopes and sealed the envelopes, I then shuffled them behind my back. And then I stuck on these little labels with the codes. So not even I knew what target details were in what envelopes. And I had dates going back. I had several around about 3000 BC, several around about 7000 BC. I had a few around about 10,000 BC. I had some around about 2000 BC. I had like a multitude of dates all over the place because I wasn't sure. And I thought, I'm going to look at all these conjunctions and pick the best ones involving the Earth, Venus, Mars, and the Pleiades somehow, and just see if he can view, one of these targets blindly and give me some descriptions which indicate that there's this strange activity going on with these planets, with these celestial bodies, that would nail the time when we had one of these disasters. And that's what I was exactly after. So what I did then with the first one, right? The first one was, see now. Let me just hold this up for you. This one here, this KW48, this is the envelope. So I opened it up, took out the piece of paper, wrote on KW48, and it says time of interest, Julian calendar, in this case, 5th of October, 3153 BC, target, the planet Earth. Now, the remote viewer, who shall remain anonymous, he doesn't want to be named, he then did a viewing, and all he had was that code, KW48. He knew nothing. He just had his stencil with his 3 questions in, and he was going to draw the image. So the target's the planet Earth, and we've got the date here, so I'm going to share my screen with you and show you exactly what he actually found. This is the first pairing of interest. Now, can you see that on screen?
Sure can. Looks great.
Yeah. So he's got, describe the scene for event above, and it says primary shape and features. Man standing with staff, dresses in robes, dog or other 4-legged animal nearby, people sitting on hillsides. A river flows nearby, bright 6-pointed star in the sky. And then he puts main colour, earth tones. Now that's very interesting because the target is the earth, and he's kind of picked up on that. And he says, quiet, people quiet and orderly. Maybe they are eating. Man and people are waiting for something. And he's got, see this guy with his staff and the way he's drawn him. And there's this river on one side. We've got all these groups of people waiting around, and we've got a 6-pointed star. And this, again, he's totally blind. He doesn't know what he's viewing. He doesn't know the significance at all. So, when we have a disaster on the Earth, we'll tend to get a mass movement of people, won't we? We'll kind of get like an Exodus type event, wouldn't you expect? And when I saw that, do you know what I thought to myself? I thought, look at Charlton Heston there in the 10 Commandments, parting the Red Sea. We've got a few animals in the gap bit there with all the people waiting around. He's there with his staff. You can see that right there. I swear to God, I thought this guy could be channeling the very movie, And in the way remote viewing works with intent, it is conceivable that he was channeling the movie scene, But I think he had latched onto some sort of Exodus type scene, with that remote viewing. Now, I realize that initially looking at this, you're thinking, well, maybe, but it could mean anything. Well, here's where things get very, very interesting, okay? See, I've just shown you that was, the target for that was planet Earth, 5th of October, 3153 BC. So his session then, I tentatively thought, it looks like an Exodus scene. Then I looked at another code, okay? I looked at another code that he'd given. This was this one here, XQ27. So I pull it out.
Oh, I know what that is.
They're
I'm just kidding.
all randomized. I randomized
I
this
know.
code
I know.
myself. So, but I wrote it on. Time of interest. Julian calendar. 5th of October, 3153 BC. Target. The planet Venus, right? So this turns out, this next one I'm evaluating here, is exactly the same date, right? 5th of October, 3153 BC, as the one with the, tentatively the Exodus moment. So I look at his scanned image, what he has done. He's looking at the planet Venus. He's blind to it, though. He doesn't know what he's looking at, but he's got his stencil and he's going to fill it in. So here's what he sent me. I was astonished when I saw this one. This was just brilliant. So let me share my screen with you.
This is better than Men Who Stare at Goats.
Do you see that there?
It's pulling up right now. There it is, yeah.
Yep. XQ27. And he writes, he's inside of a tube populated with spheres. Scale could be atomic or planetary or anything in between, but most likely atomic. Tube is curved. The main color, steel gray. Activity with tube or scene, with object or scene. I am moving, hurtling through the tube, narrowly avoiding the spheres. And you've got this drawing here where he's me and he's like going through this slightly curved tube, all these massive particles and whatever, yeah? And I've got to tell you, if he is not viewing a cometary tail, I have no brain in my head. It's right there in front of you. He talks about mainly being small, but up to planetary scale, yeah? And he's going through all these spheres. He is viewing the planet Venus at precisely the 5th of October, 3153 BC. And he's describing what looks to me like a straight-out cometary tail. And this tells me straight out, this is the date. This is the date when Venus was a comet. Now, just to show you, remember I said that I based all this upon me going into Starry Night and looking for various conjunction patterns, yeah? Well, what I'm going to do right here, I am going to show you the conjunction pattern, right, for this date in question. This is it here. We're at the center of the sun. It's 5th of October, 3153 BC, and it says 2342:54, yeah? And from the center of the sun, you've got the Earth in conjunction with the Pleiades, and you've got Venus and Mars in close conjunction, yeah? This is the very time when he is saying, when he's looking at Venus, he's seeing a comet. And this leads me to think that we've got this pattern here of Venus and Mars igniting in some way to make Venus become a comet. And it happens when the Earth is with the Pleiades, yeah? Now, let me see now. There's one other thing I want to try and show you here, and I'm going to have to go into Starry Night, and I'm going to, let's see now. Let's see. October. Just messing him out here. We're in Starry Night here, and I'm going to go to this one here. But let me show you. I'm going to go for the sun center. Sun center. Right. So, you see what it says Alcyone? You can't actually select the Pleiades as a star grouping as such, yeah. So Alcyone is one of the main stars of the Pleiades. So you can see there that we've got the Earth and the Pleiades, right? And we've got Venus and Mars, close conjunction. This is the same kind of time frame. But remember the myth of Ovid, right? There's the moon involved in this. So what I'm going to do is, and we're a bit in the way with the Skype thing, so I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to show you here. We're going to lock onto the Earth, center on that. And let's just go straight in there. You can see the moon here, yeah?
Yep.
Now, I'm going to just adjust this slightly. One day. We're going back there. And I'm going to go 7 hours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, we can go 8, I suppose. There you go. And you can see the moon's just above it, yeah? The moon actually is, in fact, in conjunction. It is closer to the Earth. Distance from observer 0.9809. Distance there 9836. The moon is in between them. And remember what the Leucotho is, if it having a union with the Earth, yeah? And in this case, the Pleiades star group is kind of capturing or freezing the Earth and Moon in union. Yeah, it's as if this is the follow-on. We had the Mars and Venus captured by the Pleiades, and then in part 2 of Ovid's Tale, we've got the Moon in conjunction with the Earth, and this is what causes the death of Leucotho, so to speak, and the Earth. I said the Moon. In a way, because of her death, she's the love of the sun's life, so he goes pale, goes dark when this happens, and the agitation is all tied into that. So basically, this seems to fit the very date in question, right? It seems to fit the precise date in question. Now, here's the interesting thing as well, though. So let me just get rid of this. You know as well as I do that remote viewing is one of those things where you want validation, right? I've just shown you right now that we've got a remote viewer saying 3153 BC, Venus was a comet, right? And if that's the case, I'm saying it's spewing out material from its cometary tail, and the Earth may well hit significant fragments of it, yeah? If that's the case, then is there anything to back up that remote viewer that is a time of disaster? Well, here's a nice book I want to draw your attention to. Uriel's Machine, you can see. This is Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas, yeah? They talk a lot about destruction to the Earth, and they give all kinds of various graphs and whatever, you're looking at various things which note changes to, tektite rocks, layers on the Earth which have, ozone layer things. They're looking at tree ring data, the whole works. They're looking at all kinds of geophysical evidence tied in to seemingly, global upheaval at various key dates. Yeah. So I'm going to cite now. I'm going to show you an image from this particular book. This is concerning it's a particular researcher that they were looking at. I'm going to share my screen with you again. Do you see that there on the screen?
Yeah.
It says, we know from the magnetostratigraphical record of the planet that the comet described to Enoch, see, they're referencing the book of Enoch here, did hit around 3150 BC. We did not know the whereabouts this comet had impacted, but we had contact with a man who did. And they refer to Robert Temple. He's got a few books. I've got a few of his books. And again, they refer to a Professor Ioannis Lyritsis, University of Rhodes, quite independently. And this particular professor found evidence that a comet did hit the Mediterranean Sea around 3150 BC. He had developed his own case from a variety of evidence, but he had not considered the disturbance to the magnetic record of the Earth that we had detected. He was pleased to hear our confirmation of his findings, though. So here you've got a guy that basically is, there's a few people here. They've got physical evidence of some kind of cometary impact hitting the Mediterranean at 3150 BC, and this seems to validate the remote viewer who in 3153 BC is observing Venus as a comet. In other words, it's material that's flown off of Venus that the Earth has impacted, yeah? And the dates match very closely, yeah? They match very, very closely. So that for me is very impressive. Now, so we've got then is a couple of conjunction patterns here involving Venus and Mars, the Sun near the Pleiades, and it seems as if when we get this, yeah, somehow this is tied into Venus being a comet, okay? Now, let me then go further and say something else, because I looked at some other data, right? I looked at some other data which really takes this forwards even further. I looked at a future date. Now here I'm going to cite another book. This is a screenshot here. The Cosmic Winter. Victor Clube and Bill Napier, 1990. One chronicler, I believe this is actually a monk from a monastery or something, leaves reports of the most immediate cause of the plague. You see, we had the so-called Great Plague in the mid-14th century, the Black Death in Europe, wiped out, depending on estimates, it's either half, two-thirds, or possibly a third of the population of Europe. And it also hit other countries, in China. So we had this massive, death going on. And in 1345, this guy writes, quote, between Cathay and Persia there reigned a vast rain of fire, falling in flakes like snow and burning up mountains and plains and other lands, with men and women. And then arose vast masses of smoke, and whosoever beheld this died within the space of half a day. There seems to be little doubt also that a worldwide cooling of the Earth played a fundamental part in this process. The Arctic polar cap extended, the changing the cyclotonic pattern, etc. And this caused widespread famine, death, and social disruption, right? And again, you had falling populations, abandoned villages, the whole thing. So even before the Black Death came, then a human catastrophe of great proportions was underway in late medieval times. So, in history, we know that this 1345 date, or the first few decades of the mid 14th century, we had massive death and disaster. Now, in Orthodox history, this is all put down to the plague, the bubonic plague. Yeah, but here he's saying no. If you just look at the physical evidence, we have got people describing what looks like a fire, sky on fire dropping down. So this led me to think, wait a minute, if we have got this kind of fiery sky going off at this time, 1345, yeah, could there be a connection to these conjunction cycles involving Venus and Mars? Yeah. So, how I said previously with the sidereal year and the way the Aztecs did their calendar, yeah? The background stars, right? They're very, very far away. And we've got the sun, the center of our solar system. So the Earth's orbiting the sun. There will be only one day of the year, one very special day, when there will be an alignment between the sun, the Earth, and the Pleiades star group. So I went to this year, 1345, and I put in the precise date, 1345, and put the Earth right there when it was in conjunction with the Pleiades. And then I looked to see what was going on with Venus and Mars. And here is what you get. This is it right here. Using again Starry Night. When the Earth is in this conjunction with the Pleiades, we've got a very tight conjunction between Mars and Venus, just offset, around about 25 degrees or so, on the one special day. Now, to have that close conjunction there between Venus and Mars, like that, happening right there on the day in question, okay, when we get this conjunction of Pleiades, it made me think, although not apparent, that Venus was ignited as a comet and we had a disruption to the solar system, possibly weaker slightly than the one in 3153 BC, but the same configuration was present. Yeah, it was present in causing this, unusual situation with the solar system. Yeah, so let's have a little think about this. I'll just stop sharing this for a second. I want to show you something. So the time interval, the precise time interval between the 3153 BC date and the 1345 date is 4,497 sidereal years. Yeah, these sidereal years. Yeah, against the background stars. So here's the other thing. So we're wanting something cyclical. I've given you two dates, both of them highly intriguing. We've got one with a remote viewer confirming Venus is a comet, 3150 BC-ish data saying, hey, some kind of big fragment hit the Earth. We had major disaster. I go forward this number of years, 1345. I've got another researcher, Klub and Napier, in this case. They're saying, hey, same year, we've got some kind of fire coming down from the sky, massive death and destruction. Just so happens, the very time when the Earth's with the Pleiades, and we've got this conjunction, a similar type of conjunction, almost identical practically. So I'm thinking to myself, what would happen if we were to go back in time? Yeah, what would happen if we were to go back this number of years? Yeah, from this. Yeah. Well, if we take this, we know there's a disaster there. We went forwards and found out 1345 disaster. If we go backwards this number of years, right, we get to this date here, 5th of September, 7650 BC. Yeah. Now, let me just see my images here. Ah, yes. You can see, let me show you on screen if I'm... So if I go back precisely that same number of sidereal years then, September the 5th, 7650 BC, once more we get the Earth in the Pleiades. I've refined it so it's accurate there, and you can see a close conjunction between Mars and Venus. Very interesting, the same kind of setup, yeah? It's exactly the same kind of setup. Now, here's where things get very interesting. Again, I'm going to cite to you the book. This is another snapshot from Uriel's machine. Yeah. Now, note the date again. 7650 BC. This is the pattern. I'm going to now show you an image screenshot from Uriel's machine. Here we've got them talking about another disaster. First, they note in the first 3 lines, it says, well, 9,520 years ago, that's BP's before present, plus or minus 200 years. And then they cite, look at the bottom, 7 impact sites of the 7640 BC comet. This is from the work of Tolman. And again, I'm just going to give you a few quotes from Uriel's machine here, because what this Tolman team did, they got it even further. And I'll just read out a few. It says here, see now, they reasoned that a cometary impact would always have the effect of destroying large chunks of the ozone layer, and the flood comet would have been no exception. Looking at the radiocarbon calibration curve produced by Cromer and Becker, it's very academic, this book, by the way, the Tolmans were struck by the pronounced peak in radiocarbon, which occurred 9,500 years BP. This could only have been caused by a massive destruction of the ozone layer, such as one would expect from a comet impact. We already knew that the fossil record showed mass extinctions caused by the impact of earlier comets, and followed in most cases by the appearance of genetically different species. The Tolmans had argued that evidence from the archaeological record, which shows that over 10,000 species became extinct at the Pleistocene-Holocene boundary, which is generally dated to circa 10,000 years ago. They dated the worldwide flood to 7640 BC. So this is just 10 years from the date that I gave there, when this pattern was established. Yeah, and they have got evidence, physical evidence here from quite a few different sources, talking about major cometary impacts. So this leads me to think then that what we are dealing with here is a certain special pattern of destruction, which occurs involving Venus and Mars conjuncting with the Sun, and then offset by about 25, 30 degrees or so, the Earth and the Pleiades. Yeah, so this seems to be the conjunction pattern that I'm really looking for here. Yeah. Now, let me see now. We've got 3 dates then with a cyclical phenomena. I'm going to show you one other thing, right? Let's go forward. There. This one here. This is forward 4,497 years, that same critical interval, only now this is added to the 1345 date. So here then, January the 14th, 5843 AD. Once again, we've got the Earth and the Pleiades in conjunction, and we've got Venus and Mars slightly offset. So if you were to ask me, Rex, what date would I expect the solar system to go into resonant agitation? What future date? I would say this is it. This is one of them. As a very precise date, I would expect this pattern to continue, and we would have a resonant agitation. The sun will go dark. The planet Venus will ignite as a comet. Yeah. And we will have disaster. So this is a specific forecast for the future, I should say, following this interval forwards. It's happened 3 times already, bounded by an interval of 4,497 years. So I would expect that in the future then, we would get this. Now, here's where things get really interesting. So far, I have shown you these 4 different dates, yeah, and you all have this. They all have this same pattern that you can see here. But I have shown you them from the sun looking outwards. It's very interesting what happens when you go above and look at a plan view, right? A plan view of all 4 dates. So feast your eyes on this one here. Do you see that on screen?
Absolutely.
We've got then all 4 dates, and you can see that the planet that wasn't apparent from the views I was looking at was Mercury. Mercury is involved in the conjunction with Venus and Mars, only it's the other side of the sun, right? So what you've got essentially is all 4 dates. You've got the sun, the Earth, and the Pleiades conjunction, and then you've got Mars, Venus, the sun, and Mercury, right? And so right there then, you can see then that there's this other planet involved in it. And this makes matters really, really interesting. So at this moment in time, I would say tentatively what I've identified here essentially then is that we've got a basically a special pattern assembled which seems to result or trigger resonant agitation of the solar system, causing the Earth to go into, well, all the planets, to go into an agitated state, their axial rotation disrupted, and Venus would ignite as a comet. I would actually say straight out, I believe Mercury, Venus, and Mars, all planets involved in that triple conjunction, I believe, are affected by this. And if you actually look at some of the passages from the Colbrin, they actually indicate that there's more than one body than just a destroyer. And this seems to make me think that Mercury is also involved as an inner body, because it talks about one small body coming in and causing disruption, and it's another body moves ahead of it and takes over and is even more intense. There's a few references to that effect. So in looking for patterns of destruction, then you get this. Now, what I also want to show you here, because we've now got Mercury in the mix, I'm going to show you something from my website. I believe this is, no, not that one. Got the wrong one here. I'm going to show you something from, here we go. This is the book Popol Vuh, Mayan Astronomy Mythology, right? This is one of these really interesting things. Now, the Ancient World Mysteries site is my site. I've got the Occult Physics one. The Ancient World Mysteries is also my second site. I've got two. So this here is my own solution here to a very interesting myth regarding how they tracked Mercury, how the Mayans tracked Mercury. And it's one of these mythological tales which is, on the face of it, absolutely ridiculous, but it has a really important meaning. And it's about a character called Zipacna here, and he meets up with 400 boys who are dragging this log, right? And he offers to carry this log for them. But what they end up doing is they ask him to dig a hole for them, and they conspire to kill him. It says here, he should die in the hole. Yeah, they ask him to dig a hole, and they're going to basically kill him by ramming this this log into this hole. Yeah, when he's down there digging it. So what happens is he goes into this. He starts digging a hole, a shaft right down, and when he's, when he calls up to say he's finished, all his 400 boys are going to ram this log down this hole and kill him. But he realizes they're going to do that, so he digs a little side tunnel and gets in there, calls up this finished, and they ram the log down and they miss him. And he digs his way out, and then he kills all the boys and brings the tent down on top of them, that kind of thing. So that's the ridiculous story, and it's in the Popol Vuh. But what that story actually implies, it correctly decoded, it reveals that the Mayans have this brilliant way of tracking Earth-Venus conjunctions, right? Now, I talked about the tropical year, and you can see it on screen. It's here, I'm highlighting it there, right? 128 tropical years gives you almost a whole number of days, 46751, Now, we're more familiar with a calendar year of 365 days, And if you count 128 of those, you've got 46,752 days, So you can see that if you were just doing a basic 4-year leap year, correction as we do, then after 128 years, you'd have one extra day than you would if you're counting true tropical years, So Zipacna in the side tunnel, he is representative of this one extra day. This shaft he's digging is actually a conjunction alignment between the Earth and Mercury and the Sun, right? So what happens, as you can see here, is, and I give you the equation here. If we counted then 365 years, 3 of them, and then we add that to a 366 year. This is the basic leap year cycle, and we do 31 of those. It turns out, in order to take into account that one day of error we built up, we have to miss the leap year of 366. So we count 365 times 4. So that leap year, we're one too many there, and here, that's what we've actually got. One less, practically dead on. So we basically miss out the leap year. Zipacna in that tunnel is representative of that. The 400 boys, though, are representative of a further 400-day correction. And it turns out that, and this is where we go down here. Firstly, we take off Zipacna 1 day to get that. Then we take off the boys, and then we get 46,315 days. And if we then divide that by 400, we get 115.8775 days. Now, the conjunction pattern of Mercury and Venus, right, is that one there, 115.8774 just near to 5, yeah? That's what you get if you use textbook values, because Mercury's conjunction pattern with the Earth, yeah, is slightly more than Mercury's orbital period, which is just under 88 days. Now, the upshot of all this is this 115.8775 correction here. This is what the Mayans get then if you solve their little puzzle. That's what they're telling you is their value for tracking Earth-Mercury conjunctions. And I'm going to show you something very interesting, very spectacular. This is the US Naval Observatory's book. And they give a table in the back here of conjunction cycles. And I'm going to see if I can hold this up here. I know you can see that there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say 115.8775 where my thumb is? It's page 704. It just says synodic period 115.8775. Straight out US Naval Observatory. And it confirms the calendar cycles of the Maya. So this confirms basically they knew how to accurately track Earth-Mercury conjunctions, yeah? So when I showed you then the actual... when I showed you that pattern, that one there, yeah, it involves Mercury. I've already said that the calendar systems, we know they could track Earth-Venus conjunctions. We know they could track Earth-Mars conjunctions. What I was just demonstrating there is they can track Earth-Mercury conjunctions as well. So they were fully capable of trying to track this stuff here. So that's what I came up with there. Now, that seems to be then very much related to the point here. Now, here's where we get really interesting. You know, I've seen a lot of people, Rex, who've been on your programs, and quite a few of them have gone into various astronomy software, and quite a lot of them, they've looked at, Revelation, the woman clothed with the sun, and they've looked at that and they've tried to give you some kind of pattern in the sky to say, I think this is the pattern, it's up and coming. This is what the red dragon's all about. This is what the woman clothed with the sun is, you know, and they've all looked at the planets. Have you seen a few people do that?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to give you the decisive solution.
Ladies and gentlemen, be prepared.
When you see this, you will go, that's it. Seriously.
They'll go, bingo!
You will know this is the one. In the Bible, then, let's have a look. Bible. We have got various things in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, about the end of the age. And again, they talk about the sun going dark, the moon going blood red. And then we've also got Revelation, yeah? And so Jesus is basically saying there's going to be some sort of celestial catastrophe. Well, what people need to understand is that the very pattern that I've just detailed right here with this cycle is the very pattern that Jesus refers to as the day of the Lord. And so the very specific date for the end of the cycle, yeah, of this 4497 cycle, yeah, the very pattern there, when you think that Jesus was around 2,000 years ago, yeah, so the cycle ending, yeah, that cycle, it began in 3153 BC. This number of years later, the cycle ends on the date of, this is the January, the 1345 date. I've got so many cards all over the place here. But yeah, the 1345 date is the cycle ending one, yeah? This year, ladies and gentlemen, 5th of November 1345 is the day of the Lord. It happened 671 years ago. This is it. And I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to prove to you that that's the case. So here we go then. Got his Bible. I'm going to give you the critical story that you want to look at, right? And anybody can follow through with this because I'm sure everybody's got a Bible practically, but it's all on the internet. So we're looking at Luke 9 and 10, okay? Luke 9 and 10. And basically the story is Jesus is wanting to send out loads of messengers to everybody to tell them the kingdom of heaven's near, you know, be ready, I'm coming. So he's sending his messengers out to various places, right? So I'm just going to read now from Luke 9:51. It says here, when the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But they did not receive him, because his face was set towards Jerusalem. When his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them? But he rebuked them. Then they went on to another village. So he's got some messengers. Doesn't say here how many messengers he sent out. We'll get to that in a moment. But he's telling them to go to various places, knock on the doors, essentially, say, hey, I want to tell you all about this guy, Jesus. He's coming shortly. The kingdom of heaven's near. And because they're rejected initially from this Samaritan village, his disciples say, can we rain down fire upon them? Jesus says no. Let's move forward then. We're now on Luke 10, just over the page. Here's where it gets interesting. After this, the Lord appointed 70 others and sent them on ahead of him in pairs to every town and place where he himself intended to go. He said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers into his harvest. Go on your way. Now it's interesting that it says here, when it says, after this the Lord appointed 70 others, there's a nice little italic F next to it. And if you look at the code here, it says, other ancient authorities read 72. Well, we know these messengers are sent out in pairs, right? It was said in Luke 9, the first messengers, it didn't say how many. But being as we know there, he sends 70 others, and they're in pairs, no stretch of the imagination to think he means 72 messengers in total. But for some reason, this text seems to go out of the way to try to tell you, hey, I'm sending 2, and then I'm sending 70. It's like he's splitting up his messengers here. There's a reason for this, a very special reason. So, his messengers then, just to continue, he says, go on your way. See, I am sending you out like lambs into the midst of wolves. Carry no purse, no bag, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Whatever house you enter, first say peace to this house. If anyone is there who shares in peace, your peace will rest on that person, but if not, it will return to you. And he goes, go and tell them all, the kingdom of God has come near to you, And if those accept you, the people accept you, they accept me and they accept the person that sent me. If they reject you, they reject you and they reject the person that sent me, right? And he starts basically talking about some of the people that are rejecting him, his messengers, He says, hey, it's going to be worse for you, than what we're going Tyre. And he says, are they more tolerable for you, for Tyre and Sidon than you, yeah? He says, I tell you on that day it will be more tolerable for Sodom than for this town because they've rejected, like as in Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, here's where we reach the best bit. So his messengers have all returned, his 72 messengers. They returned with joy, saying, quote, Lord, in your name, even the demons submit to us. He said to them, I watched Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning. See, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice at this, that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. So he's talking to his 72 messengers. He's telling them, I give you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions. Nothing will hurt you. Your names are written in heaven. Who are the 72 messengers? Well, I'm going to now show you, I want to give you my screen and show you exactly what the interpretation is.
I hope everybody has their seatbelts on for this.
They should do, yes. You know how I've been talking all about Mars-Venus conjunctions and about how they're tied into this cycle of destruction, yeah? Mm-hmm. Well, turns out this number 72 is a very special number to do with these types of conjunctions. These are the standard textbook answers for the orbital conjunctions of Venus and Mars at the top. And they reconjunct every 333.92 days or so, right? And what that means is, because Venus has got a 224 orbit, yeah? If you have Venus and Mars in conjunction, say 12 noon, yeah, 0 degrees, and you start the clock ticking and they go anti-clockwise around the sun, after 333.92 days, Venus will have completed one full orbit and be 175 degrees into the next one. Mars, though, will just be 175 degrees into its first orbit. It won't have even completed half of one orbit, yeah? So they reconjunct, but not at 12 noon again, yeah? Now, what this means is that there's a kind of forward advance of 175 degrees every conjunction. So how many conjunctions does it take for them to reconjunct bang on at 12 noon? And the answer, 72 conjunctions. And this is, you can see on screen here, 107 Venus orbits is equal very closely to 35 Mars orbits. They're both around 24,042 days, yeah? Only a slight difference. And if I divide the Venus one there, 107 Venus cycles by the 3392, you can see it's almost dead on 72, yeah? So you can see here, really, really accurate. If you'd have divided it by the Mars one, it'd again be 72, but it's not quite as good as the Venus one, but they're still very, very accurate, very accurate. So, as I said, Jesus is talking about the same configuration, right, of destruction talked about by Ovid, the Mayans, etc. So, 72 messages is 72 conjunctions, yeah? Why are they split up into 2 first and then 70 next? This is to emphasize the point that the Earth is involved in this, which brings me to this one. Again, we've got the same synodic conjunction cycle, 333.92 days. Now we've got the sidereal year. It turns out that 64 sidereal years, yeah, gives us this value here, which is practically dead on 70 Venus-Mars conjunctions, yeah? 70 of them, okay? Now, this is emphasizing then, hey, the messengers, he's talking about 72 conjunctions. This is where they return to the same point in the sky. That's the critical emphasis point. And he's also noting that although 72 returns you there, 70, it's a link in the way that the story's been split up, emphasizes the Earth's also significant here. Now, in saying all of that then, we need to go forward. So I'm saying my contention is that the November the 5th, 1345 AD event is the day of the Lord in question, and it is the same configuration. So you know when Jesus is saying to these messengers, go and knock on somebody's houses, go into their houses, etc., we are talking about houses of the zodiac. We're not talking about anything physical happening on the earth. He's not going to Jerusalem, the city on the earth. He's not sending his messengers out to Bethlehem and Galilee on the earth, knocking on doors and wherever. We're talking about these messengers aligning, the conjunctions aligning to various houses of the zodiac, yes? And this is why when his disciples said, when the first 2 messengers came back after not being received, they said, shall we rain down fire upon them? And Jesus rebuked them. Why? Because the conjunction is not in the right house of the zodiac. So what kind of houses of the zodiac are we looking at? Well, if we just show you this again.
Nibiru.
You can see here, then the top left screen, we've got 5th of November, 1345 AD. All the others, yeah, well, the bottom 2 are before Jesus, and the other one is well into the future, the 5843. So you can see then we've got this conjunction. We've got the Earth, Pleiades, separately aligning to Mars, Venus, and Mercury, right? Here is the one thing that so many people have missed. What happens if we position ourselves at the center of Mars and look all the way down the triple conjunction? Yeah, Mars, Venus, and Mercury with the Sun, right? What happens if we look from the viewpoint of Mars all the way down there? And with Starry Night, you can look at the constellations in the heavens behind the conjunction. So this is the money shot, edge of your seat moment. This is what you're looking at. Do you see it? I've highlighted 3 constellations of particular significance. One is Serpens Cauda, which means serpent's tail. The other one is Scorpius, the scorpion. And the other one is Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. And you can see he's holding the serpent with the illustrations. If you actually look to the top right, it says serpens caput. That means serpent's head. But that's far removed. You'll also notice then that I've highlighted 3 stars of significance. You see the star which is the very sting of the scorpion's tail? That's called Shola. And you see the star which is the lowest star above the green plane of the Earth's orbit, the ecliptic, yeah? The serpent's tail constellation, the lowest star, is called Z Serpentis. And you can see there's another star just next to the sun. That's in the Ophiuchus constellation, yes? So, the sun is Jesus. Does he not say, I am the light of the world? Indeed he is. So here we've got, from the viewpoint of Mars, we've got a conjunction that is targeting right there the foot of Ophiuchus. And what do we do with our feet? We tread on things. And what did Jesus say to his 72 messengers? To quote, I give you the authority to tread on scorpions and snakes. Nothing will hurt you. Your names are written in heaven. Here you've got the conjunction targeting the foot of Ophiuchus, standing, treading on the scorpion's tail below the ecliptic and on the serpent's tail above the ecliptic. It is a very elegant solution. When this is achieved, then, the sun goes dark, Venus ignites as a comet, and we get this big rain of fire, which is attested to by the chroniclers. And it's just interesting. It's like it's almost been written out of Orthodox history, and they've gone for purely the plague, and the devastation of famine. Oh, it just got a bit cold. It's just winter. It's unusual. When in fact, we had a resonant agitation of the solar system moment right here. Okay. And the chroniclers write it if you look at the right sources. So this here is the day of the Lord. But I want to really nail this to you because remember if you look at the date then, 5th of November, 1345 AD, it says 1:15:11, yeah? Now, here's where we go to Revelation. And I'm going to see if I can cite my own website again. Oh, yes. This is my website, Occult Physics, and Revelation, the Red Dragon. This is the article about it, yeah? So we've got, it talks about the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Remember how Luna, had 12 maidservants when the sun went to visit her and embrace her for the big conjunction, which led to disaster? Well, we've got the woman here clothed with the sun. So here's an interesting passage from the Pistis Sophia. And in the Bible, in Revelation, this is Revelation 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, and she's in childbirth, pains to be delivered. And then I saw another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. That's an interesting statement. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Now, who is the and who is the red, or what is the red dragon? Well, the woman is the moon. 12 maidservants, 12 crowns, crown of 12 stars upon her head, the moon. And the reference, although it's not clear from the Bible, it is from the Pistis Sophia. Let's look at this one. This is chapter 36. And I'm actually going to start at the second paragraph here. Jesus is making an invocation, speaking the name of the Father of the treasure of light. And he said, and in that hour, all the heavens went to the west, and all the eons and the sphere and their rulers, and all their powers flew together to the west, to the left of the disk of the sun and the disk of the moon. And the disk of the sun was a great dragon whose tail was in its mouth, and who reached to 7 powers of the left, and whom 4 powers in the form of white horses drew. And the base of the moon had the type of a ship, which a male and female dragon steered, and 2 white bulls drew. The figure of a babe was on the stern of the moon, who guided the dragons, who robbed the light from the rulers. And on its prow was a cat's face, and the whole world and the mountains and the seas fled together to the west, to the left. Now here we've got the babe, the figure, the baby. She's in childbirth, yeah, and it's on the stern of the moon. So remember I was talking right at the beginning, and I said, well, when we get these patterns, the sun's rays withdraweth back unto themselves when the dragon of the outer darkness enters our world, if you will. It's a cancellation of light waves, and that's what causes the sun to go dark. So when we talk about the red dragon, what we've actually got going on here is, as you can see here, nice little visible light spectrum, we end up going to a kind of red shift towards the red end of the spectrum. When this resonant activity occurs and the planets start to become agitated, the sun's light waves are affected. They withdraw back onto themselves. It's a destructive interference event, as physicists, as physicists would call it. Yeah, they withdraw back onto themselves. Yeah, and this is the statement here. This is what I read out at the beginning. If the sun withdraweth into himself his rays, then indeed the world is not able to endure the darkness of the dragon in its true form. So it's a temporary thing. Yeah. So we have then The dragon itself is the sun itself undergoing cancellation of its light waves. This is an energetic change, right, in its state, and this is what ignites the inner planets. It ignites Mercury, Venus, Mars in this triple conjunction, right? It ignites them in that way to become comets due to this energy change, along with a resonant agitation. Yeah. So let's just move on a bit now. What was this business about? And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. Well, it's 1/3 of the sky, 120 degrees, yes? So if you're at the earth, you'd want to see, well, 120-degree angular separation between the moon and the sun, right? You see, the earth's the pivot point. So it's basically referencing an angular sweep in the sky, okay? So let's go to Starry Night. Now we're back in Starry Night here, and I'm going to show you the 1345 event. I'll just show you this first off. Let's see now. Where are we? We are at the center of the sun. Yes. This is the 1345 date, the exact snapshot I gave you when I was showing you the constellations. Yeah, the same time period, right? So we might want to ask ourselves, what's going on with the moon? So let's move to the center of the earth. Just do that. Right, we're in the earth center now. There's the moon right there. There's the sun right there. But I'll just bang it on here. You can see the marker. Sun there, moon there. Right. I hope this works fine. I'm going to grab hold of it and we do an angular sweep. It says 110 degrees. Do you see that? Is that clear?
Yes.
Right. Now, remember I said to you before, well, we might need to just make a little refinement, but we'd like to think it's not much. So I'm going to alter the time by less than 1 day. In fact, it's going to be 18 hours, right? I'm just going to change. This doesn't compromise the integrity of the conjunction here, but, you know, it's still very accurate. And I'm just going to change this. We're just going to go in here. So it's November the 5th, 1345, 1:15:11, and I'm just going to change it. So now it's still November the 5th, 1345. It's now 20 hours, 46:52, yeah? So we've only just made a slight alteration and the moon's moved a little bit. So sun to there. See? 120 degrees, precisely. Angular sweep between the sun and the moon. We can't get much better than that. And let's just have a look again from the sun center. See? Yeah, there you go. See how accurate the conjunction still is? Hardly moved at all, yeah? Very refined. So here we've got then the tie-in to the reference in Luke, giving us the 72 messengers, Venus-Mars conjunctions there. We've got the same pattern talking about the Pleiades, right? And that ties into the Earth conjunction with the Pleiades and the Sun. And with just that slight alteration there, we've got the 1/3 of the sky swept out. Brilliant, just as in Revelation. So I've got to ask you, what do you think?
I think it's fascinating, and I certainly appreciate how you've put everything together so eloquently. It makes it a lot easier to understand the numbers, the cycles, the sequences, as well as the software that you're using. I think it's very user-friendly. I appreciate that.
Well, I say as far as the actual, as I said, so what I think has gone on here basically is, just to stop sharing, what we basically got then is several dates, all marked by, you know, real physical evidence, okay, of disaster, yeah? We've got multiple comet hits going off there at that date. Then we've got another one going off at that date there, yeah, which is precisely 4,497 years later, yeah? Physical evidence. And if we go forward from this date to the 1345 date, same interval, again, we've got the disaster from the physical evidence and the accounts there, the population disaster. And as this date here seems to correspond in its configuration very accurately, I would say that this is the Day of the Lord event, yeah? It's not just 1 day. It's a recurring it's a recurring cycle, yeah? So what I decided to do next, right, this is where things get really I'm going to summarize this because I realize this is where things are going to get, I could lose people on a technical level here. But I've got this primary interval then, right? I've got a primary interval where we've got this here, I decided to evaluate the cycles of the Earth, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. I decided to evaluate primarily the triple conjunction, within this kind of time frame, within this measure here, and evaluate the lowest common multiples and the orbits to see if there are sub-instances of this same pattern of destruction within these time cycles, which also could correspond to dates of disaster, And what we've got, what I found was that there are, and I'm going to try and, this is going to be a little bit technical because I'm going to be referring to a spreadsheet I did, right? So let me just see if I can share my screen with you again and show you a spreadsheet that I did of an analysis, and I'm going to have to explain again how I did this. Let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. Can we get rid of that? No. Right. This is a very messy spreadsheet.
Hey, where was that desktop real quick? That castle. Is that in Ireland?
I think it's Scotland. It's one of the default ones on cool. Microsoft Windows 7. It's a nice picture, that. I think it's in Scotland. So I've got
William Wallace used to hang out there.
I've got a statue to him. It looks a lot like Mel Gibson, you know.
Freedom!
So, let's see now. This is it, right? What I found, I did a very detailed analysis of a 4,497 interval, And if you just see the top line there, it's got the, what I'll do actually, I'll make it bigger so people can see it better. The top line here then, it's a 7650 BC, Well, I've added that in because it's one of the dates in question. But what I did, I looked at the dates between this 3153 BC date, and going all the way down to the bottom, 1345 AD date, And you can see the number here says 96. Well, if I ignore the top row, the number 1 here, which is the 7650, and the top thing here, you basically got, I think it's 93 sub-instances of an alignment between Mars, Venus, the Sun, and Mercury in that order, targeting, the Scorpion's Tail constellation, all targeting that general area. I basically evaluated this period between 3153 BC and the 1345 AD and found 93 sub-intervals of that kind of conjunction pattern with a certain measure of accuracy, targeting the Scorpion's Tail longitude of the sky. And what I wanted to know was, how accurate were all these conjunctions? Now, I gave them a wide berth, and I want to show you, if you can see here. See where it says Sun to MVM angle. M is Mars, V is Venus, and M is, the other M's Mercury. And this column here, the M column, is degrees, and the N column, it says min, is minutes of arc. So it's degrees and minutes of arc. There are 60 minutes of arc in a degree, right? So what I did, I refined them all. I worked out there were 93 sub-instances of the conjunction with a certain measure of accuracy, going up to about, you can see that says 11 degrees, going up to roughly about 11 to 12 degrees. I wanted them all within a kind of a leeway of about, 11 to 12 degrees, But I wanted to look at them all in terms of their absolute accuracy. So what I did was, I positioned myself at the center of Mars, aligned Venus and Mercury to an absolute ideal longitude-wise, and then once I got the planets in conjunction, I then looked at the angle between that conjunction and the Sun, and I noted here whether it was east or west, as you can see in this column, and this column is how many degrees and minutes of arc. So in the case of the 3153 BC one, the conjunction involving the 3 planets to the Sun is very accurate, 0 degrees, 45 minutes of arc. The 7651, 1 degree, 49 minutes of arc. So they're very accurate, So that's what I did there, So I looked at all these conjunctions. Now, here's the thing. All these conjunctions are going to be very, very closely targeted. The triple conjunction involving these 3 planets is going to be very closely targeted to the Scorpion's Tail thing, But the Earth could be anywhere in like 360 degrees. It could be like anywhere basically in the sky. Now, these mythologists seem to suggest that when disaster strikes, the Earth should be somewhere near the Pleiades star group, yeah, which is another background star group. So what I did was I looked at, and I'm going to show you the column here. This is the end column. Shola is the star, which is the scorpion's tail. And the Earth there, I was looking at the angular separation in all these 93 conjunctions. It could be anywhere from 0 all the way around to 360 degrees, yeah? At the same time as with the accurate triple conjunction of the planets targeting, Shola itself, the scorpion's tail. But the Earth could be anywhere. So, being as we know that the Pleiades is roughly in these cases here, for those two dates, these are the 7650, 3153. These are the dates we've already got here. There's in green. So the Pleiades roughly is going to be 211 degrees. If Shola is like a 0 degrees, so you go all the way around clockwise. It'll be 211 degrees there, 208 degrees there. These shift because of precession, yeah? So I want to show you something quite remarkable here. What I did was this. I'll do it right now. You see how they're all numbered? 1 going all the way down here, and they're all in precise date order from lowest, cancel that, all the way down. I'm going to take this column here for the Earth, and I am going to reorder the data. Okay, let me just do it this way because this Skype thing's it way. I'm going to reorder the data so that we're going to get all of the instances where the Earth's close to the Pleiades in order. So watch this. Smallest to largest, expand. So now if we go all the way here, you can see they're all randomized in the dates. Well, I'm going to just go down and show you something very interesting here. Now, they've all suddenly got very close to one another, a big batch here. The 1345 AD one, already discussed, 3153, 7650, but now I've got 3 others. And what is so interesting about these 3 here is, you see the accuracy of the conjunctions here and here. This is degrees, this column here, the M. N is minutes of hour. They're all very accurate. But the ones here, 6 degrees, 4 degrees, look, we've got 8, 7, 5 degrees, and then we've got 7, 4 right here, yeah? So these here, not very accurate. But it just looks like we've just got a group of them that are like really accurate here. We've got 1970 BC, 557 AD, and 627 BC. Now, I thought to myself, has anything unusual happened on these dates here? And the answer is yes, okay? 557, we've got evidence from the geophysical record that there was a major cometary impact that hit Britain in particular in 562 AD. Now, remember what I was saying previously about Venus being ignited as a comet, spewing out material, yeah? It's going to have material which is going to be dissipating throughout the solar system. And so I'm expecting, quite literally, the Earth is going to be in a danger zone for perhaps several orbits. And we may then get the Earth ploughing through a region of material from Venus which is still dissipating. And I think this is why the conjunctions are very precise in giving us the resonant agitation, igniting the planets in the triple conjunction, but we may get disastrous hits from a bombardment, which may be over, the next several years ahead. They're not as precise, but there's actually evidence for 557. This is the date of the configuration, very close to the others already discussed. But 562 AD, we've got a comet, and I'm just going to see if I've got this article up and running here on this. No, we ain't got it there. There was there's a reference here. I've got a book by Grant Berkeley, which talks all about this. Let me see now. Here we go. Self-realization community. There we go. It's still loading up here. Here we go, the comet of 562 AD. Yeah. This is one here that, again, they talk about it. Star of enormous size appeared, single shaft, and the head of the shaft is a ball of fire, etc. As I say, they talk about a comet, but I want to emphasize here, Venus is the comet. What they are talking about are significant chunks coming off of Venus and hitting the Earth, right? Venus is the big comet, but what we've got here are bits of debris, and we've got the comet here 562. So, and that's one reference here. There's a lot of other researchers looked at that, you know. People have looked at King Arthur and so forth, and you can see some of the references here. Comet that struck Britain in 562, further evidence. So you've got that. Now, the other thing that you've got is Isaiah for the other reference here. Let me just go back here. 627 BC. You know, Isaiah was only a few years before that. I think he was born in the 8th century, died in late 7th century. And again, we've got the same kind of things coming from him. We've got like, you know, beware the earth will be turned upside down, its inhabitants scattered. The earth goes to and fro like a drunken man. It falls to rise no more. It's interesting as well, just going back to the 557 AD event, there are what's called the prophecies of Merlin, as in, you know, Merlin the magician, the King Arthur stuff. And again, it's one of these textbooks, and he himself talked about the damage that would occur when this kind of prophecies of Merlin. I saw a really good one here when somebody was listing all the things in it, and he was actually talking about here we go. This is it here. The scales of Libra will hang awry until Aries props them up with his curving horns. The moon's chariot shall run amok in the zodiac. The Pleiades will burst into tears. Yeah, we've got the Pleiades mentioned right here in Merlin's prophecy. And this is, again, around the time of, you know, the 6th century and that. So he's talking about the same thing. So we've got the same kind of thing going on in the 6th century AD. So strictly speaking, right, from the time of Jesus to the present time, we have had 2 instances of a so-called Day of the Lord event. Now, I think Jesus himself was specifically targeting the 1345 AD event because that gives you the 1/3 of the sky with the moon, yeah? And it's also the cycle ending, the primary interval of 4,497 years. The one that we've got for the 557 AD event, that one is a sub-interval of it, yeah? So that's different. The one that Isaiah talks about, again, this is just a few years prior to the 627 BC event. So there you've got that one, yeah? Now, I'll just bring up the 1970 BC. Now this is a very interesting one. So remember I was talking all about the Colburn and the Exodus moment. When was the Exodus? Well, I have to say I looked into this, and depending on which researchers you're looking at, some people think it's the 13th century BC, 1290. Other people think it's about mid-15th century. And some of that stuff is like indirect. I believe some researchers are saying like they thought that it's something like 480 years after or before the Temple of Solomon was built, something like that. So then it all rests upon when was the Temple of Solomon built. And so some people think round about 1000 BC, so they've gone for a 15th century Exodus date. I've seen other people say 1628. So it's really not a clear-cut issue, but purely on a celestial point, I'm putting forward my own view here as a contender of 1970 BC, yeah? I think that could be the Exodus date, because again, all these highlighted ones here, these green things here, they all have the same conjunction pattern with accuracy, and also, you know, the Earth's close to the Pleiades, because as you can see here, they're all roughly within like 17 degrees of one another, 205 to 222, yeah? So there's that to consider. Now, bearing that in mind then, here's where we get things and go a bit further back, because we can take this interval from, say, 3153 BC to 1345 AD, and we can look at the sub-intervals between the cycle. And this is a really interesting chart I've got here. We can see that there. Well, it's that big. Is that big enough for you? Can I?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So what we've got here then, I've basically, and this is purely arbitrary, by the way, I've created what's called world age cycles. And I've gone back and I've called world age cycle 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 begins in 12. It's this date here. Yeah. 12,147 BC. Yeah. World age 2 begins 7650, already discussed. Then world age 3, 3153. Then world age 4, the current age we are in, 1345 AD. Yeah. And what I found then is that what you have then, and just going this particular to World Age 3, we get from the 3153 BC date, and it turns out there, 1,183 years later, we get to the 1970 BC. Then it's 1,343 years later, we get to the 627 BC event. Then we have a repeat of this 1,183 to get us to that one there, the 557. And then the cycle completes 1345, and then we've done a full 4,497 years, yeah? And so basically that pattern, these intervals here, they're repeated in each world age, if you will. And the reason why this is interesting is because when I map them backwards, especially to World Age 1, you see the equivalent here of the 1970 BC event, which may well be a good Exodus contender. The equivalent is the 2nd of August, 10,964, yeah? Now, did anything happen around about that time? Well, as a matter of fact, this was one of the most devastating periods in history, yeah? And let's have a look at, here we go. Not that one. Here we go. Did a meteor trigger the beginnings of civilization? Evidence suggests a meteor asteroid struck, this is Quebec, 12,900 years ago. Now that means 10,900 BC. Yeah, they're talking about a massive asteroid hitting the Earth. Now, here's something happening in Europe. That was Quebec, Canada. Here we go, 12,900, and even says there, between 12,900 11,200, we are the eruption of what is a supervolcano called Lacher C. And this is, you can see there, Germany. This is where it's located. It's like the equivalent of Yellowstone. It blew up massively, and this would have caused, all kinds of atmospheric problems, the dust, the whole area. So again, we've got what is 12,900 years ago, but it's 10,900 BC. We've got asteroids hitting the Earth, major problems there. And again, looking at the chart here, this is the date. If we map the Venus configuration back, we get 10,964 BC, yeah? Now, let's look at this one here, 9621 BC, yeah? Now, where have we heard that before? Well, anybody who's looked at Plato's work, the Timaeus will tell you, there's a story in there where Plato's recounting that Atlantis, as he called it, this great civilization was destroyed 9,000 years before the time of Solon, and Solon was around 600 BC, 9600 BC. Yeah. Now let's just go back again. What have we got here? This is another one. This is talking about the 12,800. You see, it's a bit. You see, the 12,900, 12,800. I've even seen 12,850, but they're all roughly talking about the same kind of thing. Yeah. Here we go. 9600 BC. This is all from Graham Hancock's site, as you can see. He's mentioned this again. And again, he mentions the Plato. This is the Plato reference here. But they're looking at all the disasters and looking at the geophysical evidence surrounding it, yeah? So you've got all of this stuff going off. We've got another one here. This is 12,850 years ago, yeah? So this is halfway between the 12,800 and 12,900 years, yeah? But again, they're looking at massive cometary impacts. And again, I suggest it's Venus ignited as a comet, yeah? They've got the sediment data and all the rest of it there, yeah? It's Venus ignited as a comet, and the material is hitting the Earth, yeah? That's what is actually causing this. And it's a specific mechanism of the solar system. It's a very specific configuration that gets you this, yeah? So that's basically what my solution is to world ages. As you can see, I've put them on here just for people to see. I've got the Julian day numbers here. And again, I want to say straight out, following this pattern then, the next end of the world, if you want to put that in inverted commas, the next end of age event or day of the Lord is this date right here. Yeah, 28th of November, 2528 AD. And this is the Julian day number. So let me just show you what we are looking at here. Yeah, there we go. Where at the center of the sun, there's the Earth, there's the Pleiades, Venus, Mars, right there. And let's have a look from the top-down view and show you the full thing. Mercury in alignment as well. Yeah, see Mercury? They're all in alignment, yeah? The whole configuration is right there. So this is November the 28th, 2528 AD. So I prophesy for those people alive upon the Earth 500 years from now, that will be the date when once again the solar system will go into resonant agitation. We will see the planets here involved in this conjunction ignite to become comets, and the Earth itself will be disrupted and hit most likely by some of the debris, and we'll again have a lot of the world's population killed off, and we'll have another cataclysm. This is the very next day it will happen, 28th of November 2528 AD, according to this world age cycle here. So that's basically where I think the patterns of the planets, conjunction patterns, is what really triggers this. Yeah, it is not it's not some unknown celestial body coming in. I think that quite a lot of the number of researchers who are looking into this same problem and who believe that it's some sort of celestial body that's going to come in that we don't know the identity of. It's in a long period orbit. Yeah. I don't believe that they are correct. I think that it's all about conjunction patterns, and that's the critical stuff that we need to look at. So, I think essentially there's a lot of people writing about celestial bodies which don't even exist. It's a fantasy. I think that they've gone down the wrong research path, and it doesn't exist what they're saying. So that's basically my presentation, really.
I got to say, I mean, certainly we've gone through almost 3 hours worth of data like it was half of that time. I mean, you presented it in a very well fashion, and certainly this is a new approach for a lot of people that, like you said, maybe researching into other fields to look at, and it makes a lot of sense, man. I got to tell you, I certainly appreciate you spending your time with us and your research. And folks, this is an exclusive. This is new data that's been put together by Keith, and he's sharing it with us here first at the Leak Project. So I think that's pretty awesome, and I definitely want to recommend going to your website. If people would like to know more, go to occultphysics.com. Now, what other avenues can they get in touch with you, Keith?
Well, it's just, as I said, my Occult Physics website. I've got a contact page for emails. I mean, as I said, at the moment, I've just got my information there, but I know there's details of my book, but this is just my last copy for posterity. I'm currently just finishing off the finishing touches of my new edition. So if anybody does want to support my work, I'm taking pre-orders because I self-publish, and it's usually a small, high-quality book. So if anybody's interested in my book, it discusses, the esoteric physics, the Earth having an ideal orbit, the ideal periods of the solar system, and it also gets into a lot of there's stuff I could talk about that I've not even touched upon at the moment, to do with the sightings of megalithic structures and how they're linked to military bases and whatever, and how it triggers into certain energetic processes and classified weapon systems. There's a lot of stuff I've not even touched upon, but that's mainly what my book talks about. But the cycles of destruction is another avenue, as I say, because I always try to provide the most advanced mythological solutions. And if you go to my website, you'll see you'll be able to look at some of the things that I've discussed here with the like the Revelation articles and the Dragon of the Outer Darkness as well. So it deals with those kinds of solutions there. So if anybody's interested, freely go to my website, and if you want a copy of my book when it comes out, just give me a pre-order email. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly excited to read that, and hopefully we can get you back on again sometime. You can talk to us about the different structures that are just thousands of years old. They're way ahead of a lot of technology that we could think of how they put it together now even. So that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks again, Keith. And ladies and gentlemen, also check out leakproject.com. If you become a contributing member at leakproject.com, we have exclusive content and podcasts that are only available on leakproject.com. Also our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine time lord. Have a fantastic day, everybody. I also want to give a shout out to myozarkhomestead.com. They've got a great opportunity for people that don't have a whole lot of money, that want to have a insurance policy for the possibility of maybe some type of electrical issue, electrical grid problems, or off-the-grid solutions to a world that seems to be getting more difficult when you're plugged into the matrix. So take a look at that, myozarkhomestead.com, and have a fantastic day, everybody. Be the change you want to see. This is Rex Spare. Talk to you soon.
It's been quite a past couple of months because in terms of my research, I've been looking into various threads, esoteric threads going back now for the past 15 years or so. And just recently, a remote viewing project that I've been involved in designing has come back to give me the critical pieces of the puzzle. And this has led to almost a rush of connections, which have allowed me to make some really good breakthroughs here. And they especially bear on many of the topics that I know your guests are interested in, like cycles of destruction built into the earth and what causes them. I mean, we've got clear evidence of this in the geophysical record. And from an esoteric perspective, there are a few different things that people have put forward as causes. A lot of people talk about some sort of exotic body, like a cometary body, things like that. And then you've also got the cycles of destruction based upon conjunction patterns. So this is the kind of information I want to give, with some really solid solutions to some very important mythological stories.
Well, fantastic. And first, just kind of a little bit of humor here. It was funny because when I first started texting you, we hadn't actually talked yet. I sent you a message. I said, "Wow, who's that lady on the picture of your website?" She caught my attention, and you write back, "That's a dude." And I said, I thought to myself, "Oh wow, no way." I said, "Well, this has got to be some type of, is this like a Baphomet lookalike in the female aspect? Is this an androgynous person here? What's going on?" And you're like, "No, it's a 17th century painting." So then I said, "No way." And I sent you the picture of what I was looking at in your website, and then you're like, "No, you're right. That's definitely a chick." And so I thought that was just hilarious.
It was the Skype. My little Skype icon thing is only a small picture, and you can only expand it, really small, just to look at it. And it is a 17th century picture of a man, looking at the globe. And they have long hair back then, and so that's the. I thought you were referring to my Skype thing, so not my website picture. That is definitely a woman with holding the skull, and that's actually, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's the link to the person that does the Geraldine something right at the bottom. Right at the very bottom. That's the one, Geraldine Lamar. That's her website link there. She's a professional photographer. I actually paid her 45 euros to use some of her pro pictures there, and that's one of them. So I'm supporting her work there and giving her the link as well. So yes, some really beautiful models, and she was doing some kind of esoteric shoot, like tattoos, and she drew them on herself. So that's one of her more astoundingly beautiful models.
Yeah, that's awesome, and certainly great to give her a shout out. So if anybody's interested in some work, definitely check out Geraldine Lamana. Is that proper?
Is it Lamana? I have to look at my own website now.
Okay, well, I'm sorry if we got that wrong, but so let's get into the cycles of doom here. I mean, essentially it's what I'm going to call it, but you've got a different word for it that's, I'm sure, a lot more scientific than what I came up with there. But, certainly just feel free to share this with us, and thank you for spending your time with us. I'm glad you reached out.
I'll just get straight on with it. I mean, basically, a lot of the work in the esoteric mysteries is concerned with what we generally call world ages. Yeah, I mean, that's the general term I think a lot of people use, and they link it into things like the Mayan long count calendar, for example, the Aztec calendar. That there are certain transitions, certain special intervals of time, and when we reach the end of one of those intervals, we have some sort of catastrophic destructive event, and as a result, most people, or a lot of people on the earth, are killed off in this cataclysm. It involves geophysical disruption to the planets, environmental issues and that kind of thing. And then we kind of start at the beginning, and this goes back to Plato's work, the Timaeus. He discussed this very thing regarding a particular story he told, using Socrates, his mouthpiece, to expound his philosophy. Yeah. So when I see a lot of videos out there as well, a lot of people have looked into the whole issue of a Planet X or a Nibiru, and especially based upon the work of Zecharia Sitchin. And the general viewpoint of a lot of people out there is that we have some sort of unknown celestial body, a celestial body which is in a long period orbit on the order of every several thousand years, highly elliptical, It spends most of its time outside the solar system. It periodically makes a deep penetration, and when it does, it exhibits cometary type features, or it gets close to the Earth. And a lot of people say, well, we know about the whole issue of pole shifts. That is where we've got the Earth itself, and we have like a radical change in its orientation of its axis. We've got the Portolano maps, such as say mentioned by people like Graham Hancock, giving you accurate coastlines of say Antarctica ice free. And this is these maps date to before we could accurately measure longitude. We've got things like that suggesting that, some people have looked at that and said, well, it's not just a question of retreating ice fields. It's also a question of what if the Earth's axis were changed and what is currently Antarctica was just a bit further north, We've got things like that going on, right? So at the same time as that, then we've got this idea of a pole shift, and people will generally they'll say, well, how do you get the Earth's axis to radically topple? The basic common sense, almost, seemingly the first plausible option is we get another large mass body, gets close to the Earth, gravitationally grabs all of the equatorial bulge, because the Earth's like an ellipsoid, and causes it to topple over. But some sort of close interaction. Then we have concepts that you'll find in, in religious traditions, days of darkness. This is from a Christian tradition and also certain Greek mythologies. And so in this instance, then, again, what would cause days of darkness? And this is where people see the arrival of a large body coming in. Yes, it causes the pole shift, gets close to the Earth, but also blocks out the sun in an eclipse sort of scenario. So people like this solution, the Sitchin-esque solution. I can see you got some of the diagrams there from my website. I wrote a major article regarding Zecharia Sitchin's work on my website, and his basic interpretation of the Enuma Elish, yeah. And a lot of people out there, because a lot of people don't realize this, they hear Zecharia Sitchin, they say he translated the cuneiform tablets, from ancient Babylon or Mesopotamia, yeah. And these basically date to 1750 BC, that kind of era. I think the Enuma Elish ones date to about 1750 BC. And these are clay tablets which have survived. So paper would have been long gone, but the clay tablets have been excavated, mainly in the late 19th, early 20th centuries from these sites. And the majority of them is actually boring stuff, you might say, of like the civilization of Babylon and so forth, business transactions. I think about 5% of it, though, comes under the heading of what you might call mythology. And the Enuma Elish, it's just the name given. I think it's the first words on a series of clay tablets. And they describe a situation where you've got some kind of epic battle between two gods. One's Marduk and the other one is Tiamat. And so Sitchin talks about Marduk as being a god that comes, from the deep, which he interprets to mean deep space, right? And it comes in to do battle with this other god, Tiamat, and they clash in battle, both gods. Sitchin interprets that to mean two celestial bodies crash. And what happens as a result of this interaction is this god Marduk orbit, and he believes it's 3,600 years, and he said it takes up station Nibiru. That's its new station, if you will. So this is where we get Nibiru from. It's locked into this 3,600-year orbit. But it's important people understand this is a pure interpretation. He's got a mythological story, and he thinks it's taking place within the celestial realm. And I've got no problem with that. And most of them are. Most mythological stories are like that. And so he interprets two gods doing battle to two planets crashing into one another. And he creates this narrative. Now, interestingly enough, this 3,600-year orbit, this is one of the most, you could say, bizarre things regarding his orbit, because, to put it bluntly, it's purely as a number. Sitchin cites in his book, The 12th Planet, got it in the other room, I ain't got it here, and also Genesis Revisited, he cites this number 3,600 and calls it a sar, and he interprets it to mean a completed cycle, a princely or royal number, but also a perfect circle. That's straight away a bit bizarre, because if he's saying it's for a highly eccentric orbit, and he says it's a perfect circle is one of its definitional meanings, a bit strange. But in my own book, which I wrote here, I wrote all about the Earth itself having an ideal orbit based upon 360 degrees. And this actually shows that, the proofs I developed show that the Earth's orbit was perfectly circular when it had 360 days per year. It was a perfectly spherical form, not an ellipsoid. And it talks about the harmony of the solar system. So I don't really believe he's correct on that point. And again, he sees this god, this new supreme god coming in, this Marduk, sees this reference to this, kind of important number, a princely or royal number, and he makes the connection. And he actually For me, well, he actually states his exact words are strong circumstantial evidence linking the number 3600 as a time period that he says is in years to the orbital, well, what he believes is this god of the Enuma Elish as he's interpreted it. So he's developed this narrative. And there are, as I said, it's tenuous. I personally do not believe it is correct. And I'm going to get into that as we proceed. But as I said, a lot of people out there then, they like Sitchin's work. They see it as the basis. A lot of people have had variations on it. Maybe it's not a small rocky body. Maybe Nibiru is a planet orbiting a star. So they've gone into variant themes like the Earth's in a binary system, and that has got another star. So you've got our sun, another star, and they're essentially moving around a mutual barycenter point, a center of mass. And depending on variations here, you're either going to go for it's the solution to precession, and that's why we have the celestial shift, or you might say, no, it's not a solution to precession, but this binary star is close by, but we can't see it because it's a dark star, a brown dwarf. People have gone down that road, and then so they've said, well, we've got maybe Nibiru, rocky body, and other people have said it's some kind of star, and there's multiple orbital bodies, Nibiru being one of them, and the star doesn't enter our solar system, but the celestial bodies do at certain times. I think a lot of people know where I'm going, and they're saying all that. Now, what I personally have found in my own work, though, is that entire line of thought as an explanation, as a solution to understanding the cause of these cycles of destruction, I believe that is completely in error, and that what we really need to focus on it's not the solution involving some unknown body, but what the ancients also talk about, and these are conjunction cycles, right? Now, the ancients often talk in an astrological sense about what they call the music of the spheres. And one of the things that we know about music from the physical sciences is this concept of resonance. And I'm sure you've all seen these little demos where somebody gets a glass, puts it in a controlled chamber, and they hit it with various sound waves, and then it starts to wobble, and then it shatters. Yeah?
Right.
First it becomes agitated, and then it shatters. This is because the sound wave frequencies they've hit the natural frequency of the object, yeah? And this is what causes catastrophic failure. Now, when you look at the ancients themselves, their view of it is something similar. They refer to the planets as all sounding out their own wonderful musical harmonies, the music of the spheres. And when certain patterns are established, especially conjunction patterns, that's when we achieve these resonant agitative states, right? Now, I know that, Rex, you've looked at the book like the Nag Hammadi. You've
got a copy right next to me, actually.
Yeah.
The most updated version.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the updated one, but there's a nice one on the origin of the world. One of the this is for people who are not familiar with it. Nag Hammadi. It's a series of paper manuscripts that were salvaged from. Well, I think they've been dated to about the 4th century AD, but they were uncovered in 1945 in Egypt in a place called Nag Hammadi. There are many treaties. Some of them are Christian in their tradition. Some of them are Egyptian. Yeah, there's even I think the Asclepius from the Corpus Hermetica. There's even partially a copy of Plato's The Republic. So it really is a library, as it says on the cover. It's not even one particular viewpoint, but it gives all kinds of apocrypha, if you will, reserved teachings, not generally put out there. And when you see some of the statements in it, here's a good one. When they talk about the consummation of the age, this is from On the Origin of the World, just to relate a point. It says, before the consummation of the age, the whole place will shake with great thundering. Then the rulers will be sad. The angels will mourn for their mankind. The demons will weep over their seasons. Then the age will begin, and they will be disturbed. Their kings will be intoxicated with a fiery sword, and they will wage war against one another, so that the earth is intoxicated with bloodshed. And it says, then the sun will become dark. The moon will cause its light to cease. The stars of the sky will cancel their circuits, and a great clap of thunder will come out of the great force that is above, all the forces of chaos. Now, this is just one of those references talking about celestial bodies, things shaking, cancelling their circuits, a nice theme. But there's also another interesting one. This is Berossus and Manetho. Berossus, 4th century BC, a Chaldean. We've only got fragments of his work, and so this is just basically, I'm quoting a Roman here, Seneca, Naturalis Questiones, I think, questions about science, basically. And he's just referencing this guy, Berossus. It says, Berossus, who interpreted the prophecies of Bel, attributes these disasters, the end of the world and its aftermath, to the movements of the planets. He is so certain of this that he can determine a date for the conflagration and the great flood. He maintains that the Earth will burn whenever all the planets, which now have different orbits, converge in Cancer and are so arranged in the same path that a straight line can pass through their orbs, and that there will be a further great flood when the same planets so converge in Capricorn. For under the sign of Cancer occurs the change to summer, under Capricorn the change to winter. They are signs of great power occurring when there are movements in the change of season. So that's a very interesting reference there. And again, he's talking about conjunction patterns. Now, if you have a situation, and I'm going to go into this in the course of this presentation, discuss some of the myths, but if you have a situation where you have a resonant agitation of the solar system, yes, the planets achieve certain conjunction patterns, you can then get the planets start to shake, their axes destabilize. This gives you your pole shift scenarios without a crude recourse, if you will, to another celestial body just ploughing on through the solar system, getting near to the Earth, gravitationally affecting it, yes? We also have another reference, and this is from a book called, I don't know whether you're familiar with this one, Rex, the Pistis Sophia, means faith, wisdom. This is a great book for Christian mythologies, and in this book here, there's a nice passage, and I've actually got it on an article on my website, in fact, and it talks about the dragon of the outer darkness. Now, on my website, I've got a major 4-page presentation discussing the mystery of the dragon from a real physics perspective. Now, I said that in the Christian tradition, we have these days of darkness, yeah? Now, again, if you go with the idea that a celestial body comes in close to the, blocks out the light from the sun reaching the Earth because of an eclipse sort of scenario, you're looking at that. But if you look at some of these traditions here, they talk about something very special here. They are literally talking about the sun itself switching off temporarily as a visible emitter of light. And this again, when certain special patterns, and from the Pistis Sophia, there's a certain passage where people, Mary Magdalene, one of the questioners, she talks to Jesus and asks him all about the outer darkness, which is this great dragon swallowing its own tail. And so Mary continued again and said, "My Lord, doth the dragon of the outer darkness come into this world, or doth he not come?" The Saviour answered and said unto Mary, "When the light of the sun is outside, above the world, he covereth the darkness of the dragon. But if the sun is below the world, then the darkness of the dragon abideth as veiling of the sun, and the breath of the darkness cometh into the world in the form of a smoke in the night." And this next part's critical. He says, and I quote, "That is, if the sun withdraweth into himself his rays, then indeed the world is not able to endure the darkness of the dragon in its true form. Otherwise would it be dissolved and go to ruin with all." This translation here of the Pistis Sophia is 1921. Here you've got a guy, G.R. Smith, translating something, and he's literally talking about what we would refer to as the destructive interference of light waves, yes? This appears to be what he's actually talking about. So, if you've got like a loop reflecting back again, it's like the symbol of almost infinity, where the waves peak and trough cancel out to flat line. This then is what he seems to be referring to. Light waves cancelling themselves out and the sun switching off as a visible emitter of light. And again, this is tied in to some very special conjunction patterns. And this is the kind of solution I want to present today. So now I've done that bit of an introduction, I'm going to mention a few esoteric texts that are very interesting. And they've been used by various researchers. And one of them is called the Kolbrin, right? And it's one of these texts, again, I can't tell you there's a really brilliant consolidated history of the Kolbrin. It's one of these texts which it seemed to surface from a kind of almost a secret society, but not in a kind of a high level way, but a small group of people who've been preserving what are fragments of ancient texts which were almost destroyed in a fire in Glastonbury Abbey centuries ago. But they were survived intact, and they've been basically translated and put into book form in the 20th century, yeah? And it's a collection of books, and I think there's 13 of them, based in Britain. 8 of them are Egyptian, and one of them is to do with the Trojans, like the Greeks, yeah? Trojans are, you've heard of the war of Ilium.
Like the Spartans and stuff?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. Troy, Ilium. There's Homer, he wrote the Iliad, That was based upon that war. It's a classic. But so the Cauldron then, it talks about an object, an unknown object. It is not identified, but it's this great object that appears in the sky, and it gets closer and closer, and it's like a mountainous fire, and everybody's scared of this object, and it's belching forth all kinds of material. There's all these descriptions of it, how it's covering the land with dust, massive hailstones, the whole works, and people are basically they're terrified. They're massively, frightened by this, and it's causing such destruction. And it's this object in the sky called the Destroyer. Now, there's a few lines regarding this Destroyer then that are worthy of note, you see. And I'm going to just share my screen with you and show you what I mean by this. So,
Yeah, this is great.